Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Хто води всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там пивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Street Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.
Наші
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 517 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again on another Tuesday after another successful Sunday fundraiser.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 48 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. Really, the past 24 hours, because the past 24 hours has been so action-packed, we actually weren't able to fit in an entire 48 hours of news today. But welcome back, and we have some pretty big news to start off the night with. Of course, some of y'all may have already heard of it a little bit earlier today in our video summary, but if you have not heard, there has been a Romanian ship that was attacked along the Danube River near the port of Renai today by a Russian missile or some kind of a Russian explosive. The port of Renai sits along the Danube River, and for the length of the Danube, all the way from the port of Renai to the Black Sea itself, the entire river, as you can see when we zoom in, is shared by both the Ukrainians and the Romanians down its entire length. The Danube, for a good long time during the Eastern Bloc's history of the 20th century, was practically unused, but as the 21st century came around and the collapse of the Soviet Union came into being, we saw that the Danube River has become used more and more as a major supply route for most countries along the Danube's length, which is almost all of the major countries inside of the Balkans. And this, of course, extends all the way down to Ukraine as well, and the port of Renai, which the port of Renai is one of the larger ports along the river for Ukraine. A Romanian ship that was making its way down the Danube River from the area around Bucharest and all the way towards Renai itself ended up mooring at the port, and in the middle of the night, a Russian drone or a Russian missile, it sounded more like a Shahed 136, ended up slamming into the port and causing some moderate damage to a Romanian flagged ship. Let me keep in mind that while the NATO article largely is a military defensive alliance, it also lays out protections for civil assets of NATO alliances, such as cargo ships that are flagged under a NATO country. And here we can see the video clip of the drone ramming into the docks and also exploding. And so with that, here's the clip. And there's the explosion right there. Sounds like this Romanian crew is actually having a kick out of this whole thing.
I don't think they understand what's happening.
I don't really know. I think they might think it's fireworks. And so that now the clip repeats, but as you can see, the explosion was incredibly large. And not only that, of course, we did get the report that a Romanian ship, unfortunately we don't have the exact name of the ship, was moderately damaged, although none of the crew members who were on board at the time were injured or killed. This is still quite serious, and if we look at the NATO charter, you can see how serious this is. And I'll be pulling up the NATO charter here real quick, so that way I can scroll down to Article 6 and show why this is a big deal. An armed attack on one or more of the parties is deemed to include an armed attack on the territory of any parties in Europe or North America, on the Algerian departments of France, which no longer exist, on the territory of Turkey, or on the islands under the jurisdiction of any of the parties in the North Atlantic area, north of the Tropic of Cancer. On the forces, vessels, right there, you see that? It says vessels, or aircraft of any of the parties when in or over these territories or any other area in Europe in which occupation forces of any of the parties were stationed on the date when the treaty entered into force, or the Mediterranean Sea, or the North Atlantic area north of the Tropic of Cancer. And as you can see, it of course lays out maritime areas that are protected, which is the Mediterranean and also the Atlantic, which are these areas here. You can see that, notably, the Black Sea is completely excluded from the NATO charter, but that does not matter for what happened inside of Ukraine, because the area where this ship was attacked was just outside of Romanian territory, and not only that, not only was it outside of Romanian territory, it fell right within the parameters of Europe or North America, and also it is a vessel. And so that clearly defines that if NATO wants to, they can invoke Article 4 and Article 5 over the moderate damage that was caused on the attack of the port of Renai to that Romanian cargo ship. Speaking of which, things have been escalating a fairly large deal inside of the Black Sea itself, according to British intelligence. According to British intelligence, Russia may begin to attack civilian shipping inside the Black Sea, and this is according to Britain's UN envoy. This is also incredibly concerning and incredibly escalatory as well, because the fact that the Russians may start to attack civilian shipping once again brings into question whether maritime assets of NATO countries will end up being destroyed, and will that end up escalating the war. Of course, Article 6 does not lay out the Black Sea area as a protected area under the NATO alliance, and so there is a plausibility there that it could be overlooked if a NATO ship was to be attacked inside the Black Sea or inside of Ukrainian waters. But that still does not negate the fact that that could be happening within territorial waters of a NATO country. You have to remember that the NATO Charter does not outline any protective area for the Black Sea itself, like it does for the North Atlantic and the Mediterranean, but it does lay out protected areas for the waters and territories of countries that are a part of NATO. That includes Turkey, Bulgaria, and Romania, all parts of the Black Sea, and all having some very extensive territorial waters that comprise the Black Sea. And so if a civilian ship of a NATO country, or any country for that matter, was to be attacked inside of the territorial waters of any of those countries, it could start to invoke Article 4 and Article 5. And we can start to see that things are clearly escalating in the Black Sea area, and especially with NATO itself, as it appears the Russians are starting to target their attacks more directly at NATO maritime infrastructure and vessels. But this doesn't extend just into the Black Sea itself. This even extended all the way down into Syria today. A normal surveillance flight was being conducted by an MQ-9 Reaper drone today, and it appears that a Russian jet intercepted this drone and fired off flares that ended up damaging the propeller of the drone. Here's the clip from the MQ-9, and we can see the caption says the Russian fighter jet flew dangerously close to the U.S. aircraft and deployed flares in its path, which struck the propeller. We can see the camera of the MQ-9 looking back here. And what's very interesting, keep this in mind, remember the footage a long time ago from a US drone? I believe it was actually a Predator drone, and the footage was like 4K Ultra HD. Notice that This is what an MQ-9's camera actually looks like. And we can now see the high definition footage from another camera mounted onto the MQ-9, which shows a Z clearly painted onto the side of the Su-27 along with the number 07.
Man, I remember back when that like 4K footage came out from the Reaper drone. It fooled a ton of people. It almost fooled me for a solid few hours. But then I was like, there's no way it's that clear coming off the drone. Like you're like literally looking in real life at it.
Man, it was too clear. It was way too clear. It's like these drones don't have 4K Ultra HD cameras. They're like 1080p maybe, and then the long-range cameras, they get way up there, but those are long-range cameras meant for high resolution in a very small cone, and they're not going to have that kind of resolution at close ranges. But anyways, we can see the Russian plane here flying alongside the MQ-9, and now on a front-facing what appears to be infrared camera, we can see the Su-27 firing off the flares that ended up damaging the propeller of the MQ-9. Of course, aircraft actions in between Russian aircraft and US drones usually aren't as escalatory as attacking manned vessels and aircraft, such as we saw at the port of Renai today for that Romanian-flagged cargo ship. But nonetheless, this is all appearing to be very escalatory by the Russians and attempting to start to ramp up pressure onto the West. And of course, we love to report news on here, but it appears that a story is unfolding today that is very clear and very evident. And if we move to Moscow and look at the law that was just passed today, it starts to make a very clear picture of why the Russians may be attempting to escalate things in between the Western world and them. The Russians are running out of manpower. And this is something that we've known for a very long time, but it appears that the manpower issue is becoming so severe that they're having to bend the statements that they've made to the public to try and have some usable manpower. Just today, Putin formally signed amendments increasing the retirement age limits of reservists into law on July 24th. This means that instead of reservists no longer being reservists at a certain age, and I believe that's around the age of 35 years old, it has now been raised several years, so that way there will be more available reservists to be called upon when the Russian government needs more manpower. And that's very interesting. And also, we're getting rumors from Russian sources that the Russian State Duma is also planning to change the penalties for draft dodging and to make them far more severe than they have been before. And this has been something that is gradually occurring throughout the war, where the penalties are getting more and more severe, and now it appears that they're going to be making them even more severe than they have been. And this is, once again, clearly showing that the Russians are running out of manpower, and this may also be showing why the Russians are trying to escalate with the West as of right now. This may be a part of a new strategy to make the West blink. The West has been an unwavering ally of Ukraine throughout this entire war, providing them with massive amounts of armed aid and military support, but something that is starting to appear is that the Russians are clearly running out of time, both financially and resourcefully. They don't have enough manpower to keep the war going. They don't really have enough money to keep the war going either. Both of those are largely limited for the Russians at this point, and it's expected at the current rate of expenditure that the Russians may default by the middle of next year. Of course, that's just a rough estimate, and we don't know for certain, but that's what most analysts are saying at this point. And we also know that due to poor volunteerism in the public, not really a lot of Russian people are volunteering to go into the military right now or volunteering to conscript. It appears that they are trying to find a way to end the war before one of these problems ends up collapsing the Russian Federation, either the lack of manpower or the lack of funds. And both of those appear to be coming around about at the same time, which would be somewhere in the middle of next year. And so what they're trying to do through these escalatory actions is to make it seem that the war is closer to the Western world right now than it ever has been. And this may end up causing some people to waver in these Western governments or to blink, because they may start to think the war we've been trying to avoid for 517 days may be upon us if we don't try and find a way to pressure Ukraine to end the war. And so that may be the Russian strategy here, and hopefully Western analysts and also politicians are paying attention to this, so that way they can make sure to not respond the way the Russians would want them to respond to these mostly escalatory actions. Not only that, but it appears that some Russians are starting to get some access to casualty lists. And it seems as though they're quite shocked that people die in war. But anyways, here's the clip. I was sent a list of the soldiers of the 247th Cossack Guard Assault Regiment. The list of the dead, those who were in Sochi, those who were wounded, etc. Yes, there was a battle in Zaporizhia. Yes, there were losses. Yes, some guys died there. Unfortunately, the Ukrainians managed to capture some firearms and documents. The list of the regiments, there are a lot of documents, 200 dead, 300 injured. They left a lot of things in some trenches when the Ukrainians entered the flank. It turned out that this is a war. This is also a very big job, and they know it like no one else. Without this, nowhere. I covered all the names, but all Ukrainian groups have lists with names, and with all the rest of the story. I don't do it just for that reason, because it's my native regiment. I think it's wrong to write personal data of the dead, of the military on my channel. I don't really know what the guy's trying to get at here, because he's like, hey man, we're getting slaughtered, but I don't really want people to know that my unit is being slaughtered, Because apparently Ukrainian got a hold of the casualty list, posted it, and it started to go viral in Russian circles, and so it made it back to this guy, and now he's like, oh man. Also, by the way, Matthew,
move on.
Take care of that. And so, fairly interesting to see, and once again starting to prove that the Russian public is getting a little bit more involved with the actual truth of the losses and also the casualties that a lot of Russian units are starting to take inside of the war in Ukraine. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on down to the Kerch Bridge, speaking of things involving the sea and also the Navy. It appears that the Kerch Bridge is going to be out for about as long as we thought it would be initially. Of course, many people saw the damage that was caused to the Kerch Bridge this time, and it honestly didn't look as serious as the damage that was caused last time. It appears that both of the road spans actually ended up not falling into the water. One of them ended up falling on the very bottom of a support beam at the bottom of the Kerch Bridge. Another one appears to have been unsettled and displaced to a small degree. But nonetheless, the Russians said, and you got to remember this, Mandy, the Russians said, we're going to get this thing done in a month. This bridge will be up and running in just a month's time.
But that's a Russian timeline, though, so it's going to probably take several months. There's no way they're going to get this fixed in a month. I mean, they put asphalt over that huge, gap in the bridge. That tells you how much they're, focused on actually properly fixing it.
And that's true, and you know what's shocking? Is that now the Russian government itself is admitting that things are not the way they should be. This bridge is going to be down until the very end of this year. According to the Russian government, they have extended the deadline for rebuilding the Kerch Bridge until December 31st of this year. That is an entire 6 months. And that is coming from the Russian government itself. So who knows how long this bridge is really going to be out. it could be out for even longer than that, because we know that Russian timetables are always optimistic, especially in the Russian Federation's history. Even during the Winter Olympics leading up to 2014, we have seen that they were very optimistic with how they could manage to construct the entire Olympic village along with all of the subsequent Olympic stadiums, and they weren't able to complete those by the initial deadlines. And that wasn't even involving a war. And we've seen that the timetables, even now in the war, have been heavily misconstrued, especially by the public officials. And now we can see that they have extended this from just a month to November, and now to the very end of December in 2023. And so, a very interesting development. Also, this is very detrimental, incredibly detrimental, as a matter of fact, to the forces inside of Crimea. You see, one thing we've learned is that apparently, while the Russians are really the only military that uses railroads to a massive degree for their supply lines in the modern world, it also seems that they are starting to use a lot more trucks to support equipment and supplies moving into Crimea. And the Kerch Bridge, both sides of the Kerch Bridge, the railroad bridge and the road bridge, were facilitating a large amount of supplies and equipment that were making their way into Crimea, and then further on out of Crimea and into the southern front and into Zaporizhia itself. And this is fairly interesting, because if they have half of the bridge knocked out and a decent amount of supplies were going over the road bridge, that now means that all of the supplies that would have been split over the two bridges, now it all has to be loaded onto trains and transported over the single railroad bridge. And then that means that regardless of the amount of trains that they run or how long they try and make these trains, they probably will not be able to keep up with the supply demands of the Crimean Peninsula, and they most likely will also not be able to keep up with the supply demands of the further front lines in the occupied areas of Kherson and also Zaporizhia as well. And so this is starting to coalesce into something fairly interesting here, and that's also why we have the supply lines highlighted here. We can see the supply lines leading from the two major supply hubs in the south of Russia, Krasnodar and Rostov-on-Don, leading into Crimea. We haven't outlined all of the major highways, but we did outline all of the major roadways all the major railways, actually, that exist within the south of Ukraine. Most of them in Crimea, and also a large line just representing the land corridor as a whole. From what we understand, there was a major bridge that was knocked out in the area of Rakovy, which has blocked off Crimea from getting supplies to the north, at least at this moment, and it appears that bridge is not going to be repaired in the near future. And now with the Kerch Bridge out, the only thing that can support Crimea, the entire peninsula and all of the armed forces there, is the railroad bridge. And so based off of that, and based off of our expected supply requirements of the Russian forces inside of Crimea, as well as in Kherson, we are expecting that they are getting limited amounts of supplies or no supplies. They're certainly not getting enough to continue any kind of large sustained combat activity over weeks or days even. We're expecting that they're not getting enough supplies. And so that's probably why we're seeing that Russian forces are very reserved in this area, and they're not even trying to counterattack Ukrainian forces on the southern front at this point, is because they just don't have the supplies to even attempt a feigned assault on a Ukrainian line. Speaking of which, while they are running out of supplies, they are continuing to fire off missiles in Crimea, and this is apparently surprising the beachgoers who for some reason didn't realize it's the middle of a war. So let me show you all this clip here, because this is gold. You can see this lady on the beach, and you can see a missile firing right behind her. Oh, блядь, they didn't know it was a whole war going on. And so now the rest of this clip is her complaining about the missiles firing off near the beach.
Well, they have like that vlog music going on in the background.
Good question. I don't know why, but
like the rave music.
But a really bizarre clip. This woman is at the beach in the morning. I don't even know of people who go to the beach in the morning. Like, that's like the most dangerous time. Like, the sharks are out, the stingrays are out, everything's out. Everything kind of like cyclically comes around near the beach, and it's always in the late evening and in the very early morning. And, you know, at night, in the dead of night, usually there aren't around the beach that much. But why the hell would you be out at the beach at this time of day? And also, why in the world would you not expect missiles to be fired off from inside of Crimea? There is a war going on, after all. You know, you would expect that in a war zone, you would find war stuff. I don't know why in the world she's surprised much, but apparently this is a shock that she's in the middle of a war zone at the moment. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from that just bizarre clip, and we're now going to be moving on into, and let me make sure we have more international news. We are now going to be moving on to North Korea for a moment. And some of y'all remember that there was a guy who ran across the border into North Korea, you know, and that was a whole deal. And now he's just kind of disappeared off the face of the earth and nobody talks about the guy anymore. But that's not what we're talking about today. There's a guy who arrived in North Korea, Matthew, from Russia. Do you know who that is?
Shoigu!
Shoigu! He arrived
But not Gerasimov, though. He went alone.
Man, Shoigu, he went alone. And here's the clip of him arriving inside of Pyongyang, I believe it was, today. Here comes the Ilyushin 96 that brought them in. We can see that they brought out the North Korean honor guard. And look at this. My God. Shoigu pulled out the fine china. Can you believe this? He is whipped out.
Shoigu's kind of chonky for real.
Man, Shoigu is a chonker, I'm not going to lie. But you know what's even crazier? I've never seen him wear an actual dress uniform this entire war. But when he goes to North Korea, he's got to dress up like it's the 1970s again to fool the North Korean public into thinking it's still the 70s.
Yes.
Yeah, so here he is shaking the hands of, I believe, a North Korean general. And now they're playing the Russian anthem. What the hell is this? Look at this! Dude, they've got ritzed out SKSs. Oh my
sure
God.
And that's ghastly to like Gucci out an SKS. That's kind of messed up.
That is so stupid. Even the bayonet is like all nickeled up. This is just horrendous. I mean, I gotta say this though. It's a little drippy, I'm not gonna lie, but that's still stupid to do to an SKS because you can get a Norinco SKS for like $500 right now. Like, I'm telling you, I promise you can. Just go anywhere, you'll find them. And then they even silvered up the AKs. Those look like AK-74s, but man, dude, the honor guard in North Korea, call them bling bling because they're out here like with the jewelry. We now see Shoigu reviewing the honor guard. And now the audio has just been muted for no reason. And now you just see some lady saluting at the end of the clip. But with that, also, wait a minute, hang on. Oh, Matthew, this lady right here, she's way on up there in the government. You see, she's got the lapel with the two Kims smiling.
I thought they all had to have that.
Well, no, sometimes they're just straight faced. They have poker faces, and that means you're a party member, but you're not that up there. If they're smiling on your lapel, that means you've made it.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so she's a made lady in the North Korean military because she's got both of the leaders smiling at her. I don't know North Korean ranks, unfortunately, so I don't know if she's a general or something similar. But funny to see the lapel. Apparently the leaders favor her. But anyways, we're moving on from that inside of Pyongyang. Apparently they're there, according to the Russian government, to celebrate 70 years of the Russians helping the North Koreans to defend themselves from the imperialist West. All that garbage. You know, meanwhile, people are starving to death in North Korea right now because they shut themselves down during the plague in 2020, and that also shut off all the food imports they were getting from China. And considering that North Korea can't grow their own food, everyone just started to starve again like they did in the 90s. And so, hey, at least they got some drippy uniforms, and at least they're not Western. Hey, got to give it to them. Anyways, moving on from North Korea and into northern Ukraine, apparently, the FSB has been a little busy. I'm sorry, not the FSB, the SBU, which is the Ukrainian version of the FBI, has been fairly busy inside of the territory of Ukraine, trying to clear out traitors. And it appears that they were able to get one today in the northern border area. According to the caption, and unfortunately this post was removed, it had a picture of the person who was arrested, but their face was blurred out. On the instructions of the Russian Special Service, the alleged individual monitored the locations of deployment of Ukrainians on the northern borders. She also tried to record the exact time and flight directions of the Ukrainian combat aircraft. Of course, that's all very sensitive information in wartime. And it appears that she was caught. Don't know how, but they did catch her nonetheless, and it is good to know that the SBU is out there making sure to ensure operational security, so that way we don't see similar incidents compromising Ukrainian security as the war goes on. Moving on from the northern border area and on into our location unknowns, we didn't have many of them today. A lot of our news was actually located where it was supposed to be, in the north of Ukraine, around the world, or on the front lines. But we did have two interesting clips to show in the location unknown news nonetheless. First was a Ukrainian helmet that ended up catching a bullet in the... what's the back of the neck called? Is that called the nape?
Maybe.
But it was caught at the very back of the helmet. And here's the clip. And we can see the back of the helmet here. And we can see where the bullet came in. It appears to have come in at an angle. It looks like the bullet may have been coming in perpendicular to the guy's head. And so it skimmed the back of the helmet and got caught inside of the Kevlar. They're now going to take the helmet off. And you can see right there where the back plate deformed a little, but the bullet was caught exactly right there. And so with that, very great to see that the Ukrainians have helmets that are good enough to be able to stop a rifle caliber bullet. Of course, the angle that the bullet came in helped a lot with the helmet being able to catch it, considering that a direct hit may have possibly gone straight through, because most helmets aren't rated, at least most of the helmets you would find in the world aren't actually rated to take full rifle caliber rounds. Usually they're rated for pistol caliber rounds. Some of the American helmets though, and a lot of the US helmets that are being issued in the modern world, can actually take a direct hit from an AK-74 or an AK-47, similar rifles like that, and they can actually survive the hit head on, although the operator's skull may have a concussion or something similar. Nonetheless, that's better than being dead. But still great to see that they have helmets either provided to them by the Western world or bought by themselves that can protect themselves from rifle-grade rounds. Moving on from that and into our next bit of location unknown news, we also heard that there were 3 electronic warfare vehicles that had been destroyed in a single day. Apparently, one of these was the R-330ZH Zeitel, which is one of the electronics warfare systems used by the Russians to, of course, try and throw off GPS coordinates that hinders the effectiveness of HIMARS and also jam drone signals. It appears that they have been able to destroy not just this Zeitel today, but another 2 electronic warfare vehicles, and one of those we actually got on film near the area of Bakhmut today. The third one we weren't able to find video evidence of, but apparently, according to Ukrainian sources, 3 were destroyed today. Moving on from that, and out of this little bit of location unknown news, we're now going to be moving on into the Russian casualty report for the past 24 hours.
I heard it was good today.
And it's bussin'. And so, here it is.
X. Oh, they changed the logo.
Oh,
5. Let's go.
Oh, Totoro, 5. Oh, this is very nice. I like it.
Now, I know there should be a ton of memes. I've liked a ton of them today. So if Twitter isn't showing them, or X, or whatever they're calling this platform now, then something is glitching.
So let's see here. Hey,
There's
we
one.
got a classroom talking about the Bobcats. Love it, Jimmy.
Hey,
we
it's a Bobcat law class. Oh my god.
That's what we got. Ian Badir putting in another 5. We let's see here. What else do we have? 5 more from Nico. Very nice. Let's see. I wonder if they can you stop, please? No. Melissa Smith, 5 more today. And let's see.
Now, see, there was a lot more of these that came out today. I liked them under our likes tab on our profile, and they're not popping up here. I hate that because I want to give people their credit for going through all the trouble to make the memes. I see all of them, and I try to like as many as I see as well.
Don't worry, we do see them. We may not be able to call them out here on stream, but we do see them, and we greatly appreciate each and every one. And we love to know that people enjoy the Bobcat joke enough that y'all go out of y'all's way to make custom memes for it. Nonetheless, we have a casualty report to go through, and it has been a fairly good one today. 600 Russian troops were knocked out over the past 24 hours. And of course, very good to see. I've got to say, that is impressive. Only 200 short of an entire battalion tactical group's worth of manpower wiped out in a single day. Very good, to say the least. Not only that, but 13 armored personnel carriers were also knocked out over the past 24 hours as well. And I gotta say, that's a pretty good number and falls within the war's average, from its highest days to its lowest days, of around 13 armored personnel carriers a day. It's usually actually 12, so it's about 1 over. We also saw that 12 supply trucks were also destroyed as well. Not the highest number we've seen in the supply truck category, but it is nice to see that the number is staying consistent and at least staying in the at least the lower tens, at least. That's a good thing to see. But the main battle tank losses today were truly something. 12 main battle tanks were lost over 24 hours. That is a very large amount. That's actually over an entire battalion tactical group's worth of tanks. That would be 10. And they lost an additional 2 on top of those 10. So amazing to see that they lost that many main battle tanks today, and that would equate to somewhere around probably $40 million of tank losses in 24 hours, which monetarily is very tough for the Russians to keep up with. They also lost 30 artillery pieces, 14 drones, 1 MLRS, and 2 anti-aircraft warfare systems. All in all, today was a very impressive day for the Ukrainian army in the field, as they were able to destroy a large amount of Russian field equipment, and hopefully this will be helping them to reassert the initiative in places like the Northeast, where it appears that things have become slightly more difficult. Moving on from the casualty report, though, which is always a sight to behold, and great to know that the Ukrainians are effectively defending their ground and also helping to save citizens behind the lines, that through their amazing efforts of destroying the Russian army, they are able to ensure that no Ukrainian citizens will fall into Russian hands. It is an amazing casualty report to see. And so we're now going to be moving on into the frontline news, which is massive today. We got news from every single part of the front line, from the northeast to the center to the south and all the way down in Kherson as well. The news was fairly spread out today, but many of y'all have been going insane in the live chat. The live chat has been going a million miles an hour tonight, and I'm not even kidding. It's been about 100 chats a minute every single minute, which means that there are about 2 chats coming in roughly every second. So it has been fast. And a lot of y'all have been talking about some of the crazy stuff that has been going on, like the Romanian ship that got damaged at the port of Renai today, along with the threat that the Russians may start to attack civilian shipping in the Black Sea, along with many other things like the conscription laws and all of that kind of stuff. And Matthew has been paying attention. Of course, Matthew is a all-seeing eye in the live chat and has been seeing what all of y'all have been talking about and what a lot of y'all have been trying to say on these topics. And so what he's done is he's taken the top questions or the top discussions that we've seen in the live chat tonight, and he has turned them into polls, so that way we can see what all of y'all think on each and every top subject that we've seen in the live chat tonight. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right. Now, first, I want to say that if you've ever jumped on Twitter and found out they changed the logo to X and were surprised and shocked, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. But anyways, if y'all know who I'm imitating, by the way, put it in the chat. But anyways, moving on to our first poll of the night. We have several to address. This one says, Russia struck targets right on the Romanian border for the first time, and will NATO respond? 57% said NATO will not respond, 22% said NATO will respond somehow, 15% said it's too early to know, and 6% said unsure. And on this one, I'll be honest with you, NATO hasn't really held a very strong line when it comes to defense measures, and it's understandable because when NATO responds, it's going to be a very big response, perhaps starting a world war, so it has to be a very good reason for NATO to step in and do something. In this instance, with a ship being hit that was a NATO ship, that seems to be a big deal to me, but then again, we have to ask ourselves the question, is it worth starting a world war over? So, Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say it is a very concerning situation. And to recap really quickly, because I know a lot of people may have joined after we covered that news, because it was the first thing we covered tonight, a Romanian-flagged ship traveling down the Danube River into the Black Sea, moored at the harbor of Renai, which is right on the very tip of the Ukrainian border, right in between Moldova and Romania, was attacked after it moored at the harbor by some kind of a Russian drone with explosives attached. It appears that the ship was moderately damaged, meaning that it was getting towards the direction of capsizing in harbor, but luckily none of the Romanian crew was injured or killed. This is, of course, the closest that we've ever seen a maritime situation in the war at this point get to a direct attack onto a NATO vessel or a NATO asset. Of course, it's not a military asset, let me make that clear, but any vessels that fall within the jurisdiction or they're flagged by a NATO country, they are considered a NATO asset at sea. And so, considering that the ship was moderately damaged, there have been talks going around that this could be the prelude to further escalation in between Russia and NATO. And to be honest, it is a very serious situation. It's one that you have to kind of tread around very lightly. Of course, the Western strategy throughout this entire war has been to support Ukraine almost tooth and nail, but at the same time to not get directly involved in the war. You have to remember that wars are devastating, especially when nuclear powers like the Russian Federation and the Western world, the United Kingdom, France, and the United States, go to war with each other. There is always the chance that nuclear weapons could be used, and then there is the chance of nuclear Armageddon. And so it is not just the question of, do we want to avoid a simple shooting war? It's the question of, do we want to potentially avoid nuclear Armageddon? That's the real question at play. And that always is what makes these situations very difficult, because my initial response would be, you know what, screw the Russians. They attacked a Romanian flag ship, that's a NATO ship, let's invoke Article 4 and Article 5 and get to slamming them. But at the same time, you have to remember that there is a nuclear war that could potentially come out of this. And so then that starts to make the situation a lot more fragile. It makes you ask the question, should we do anything because of this? Or should we try and escalate? Or should we just outright go to war? What would the answer be? And I don't really know if there is a right answer to this. It really depends on whether you want to risk a nuclear war to stand up for NATO's sovereignty and also the protection of NATO assets, or do you want to support Ukraine, get what we really want out of the war at the end of it, and also avoid the nuclear war? And so that's really the question. Now, I got to be honest with y'all, I'm going to have to remain undecided on that poll considering the options, because I would want to defend NATO assets. That's the clear prerogative. But the fact that if a conventional war breaks out, and of course, some of y'all are wondering, why in the world am I saying it's going to turn into a nuclear war? Here's why. If it was a war where there was parity and both sides were on equal footing, we wouldn't see a nuclear conflict. It just wouldn't happen, because the war would drag on forever. And then, actually, there would be enough time that there could be some kind of a ceasefire arranged, and it would probably go status quo antebellum. That would most likely be the end result of a war like that. But we're not seeing two powers going up against each other that have parity. These two powers are completely unpaired. The Western world is leaps and bounds. They are actually decades ahead of the Russian Federation, militarily, technologically, economically, in every single way. We beat the Russians in every regard. And so if a war was to begin with the Russians, the fact is that the war would most likely stagnate. The front lines would be mostly fluid for about the first week, and then the lines would never really stagnate beyond that. The Russians could try and launch a defensive somewhere, either on the highways to Moscow or the outskirts of St. Petersburg, because the U.S. Army would make it fairly quickly to St. Petersburg along with its NATO allies. But beyond that, there's not really any way for them to stop the Western militaries. So they would feel that their sovereignty is threatened. Obviously, if there was a solution to come out of the war, it would most likely be an unconditional surrender from the Russians, which would threaten their sovereignty and their government. And so they would start to seriously think about using tactical nuclear weapons on these advancing forces. And then that would escalate into the use of strategic nuclear weapons like ICBMs on the United States and Europe. And so you always have to remember that that will be the end result, because we overpower the Russians every single day of the week. And so they have to rely on the nuclear arms. And that's what makes this a very difficult question, or a very difficult poll to answer, in my opinion. So I'm going to have to remain undecided because of that. But with that in mind, it's very interesting to hear that a lot of y'all would want to stand up for NATO assets, because I completely understand where y'all are coming for. And so, well, coming from, not coming for. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and moving on to our next poll. It says, yesterday, Ukraine carried out a major drone attack on Moscow, and will Russia's response be severe? 53% said yes, Russia can't afford to ignore it. 22% said no, Russia can't do very much right now. 17% said, they might, but I doubt it. And 8% said unsure. And on this one, I gotta say that, I don't know. It was a pretty severe attack. They blew up some pretty upscale big buildings right in the middle of Moscow. If y'all watched the war summary the other day, y'all saw the damage. It was definitely not light. So to me, it almost seems like Russia really can't afford to ignore that. And it was pretty bold by Ukraine. I got to say, they had some balls for doing that. But sadly, I think Russia will respond to it, but I'm not really sure if they'll be able to really do any damage to Ukraine at this point. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say the Russians probably won't be able to respond, because they haven't really responded the first time that happened. When you remember, Matthew, the video clip of that tiny drone landing in the field, it was like a small nuke. It was like the Oppenheimer set out there in that field outside of Moscow. They didn't really do anything then. They launched a Shahed attack on Ukraine. That was about it. There wasn't really much more that came out of it. And I don't really think there's going to be a a massive response to this either. Although one of those drones got within half a kilometer to the MOD building, which was a big deal. But I don't think they're going to be responding in any large way. But still, it is amazing to see that the Ukrainians are able to start conducting drone attacks on Moscow with some frequency, at least every few months, and hopefully they will be able to continue on doing something like that. And also, TD said, "Is it confirmed not a false flag?" It most likely isn't a false flag. Because if there was a false flag, the Russians would probably be able to ensure that there was some damage. For the Second Chechen War to be justified, the Russian government actually went and blew up some apartment blocks inside of Moscow and ended up killing 500 people. And that is confirmed to have been a false flag attack, so that way they could justify the second invasion of Chechnya, and they blamed that apartment bombing on the Chechens, and so that's how they got into the war. And that was something that clearly is a false flag, because it's killing so many civilians and also causing so much destruction that it's something that the Russian government forces its own hand to react to, at least due to how they're posing it to the public. This is something that the Russians could go without responding to, because there wasn't really that much actual damage. Some of the drones ended up being shot down, some of them ended up landing in places where there weren't even any people and just exploding. And so if it was a false flag, it's a really weak false flag. They could have done a more effective one and actually, and this sounds kind of like morbid, but they could have done a more effective one and actually killed some of their people, where it would look like a justifiable false flag. But I have a feeling it's probably a real deal attack by Ukraine with their drone forces. But with that, I hope that does address that poll fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and also, real quick, I just want to give everybody a heads up that in the comments of our videos, and also, I'm not sure if it's the streams as well, we have a bot that runs around giving people a WhatsApp number. Do not text that number or do anything with that. That is some kind of scam or bot that's running around on all of our streams now. Somebody is trying to get people to click on it so they can either steal your info or steal money from you or something. So watch out for that. I wouldn't want anybody to get scammed. I meant to make a community post about that earlier, but I forgot. So I saw many people warn me about it earlier, so also y'all keep an eye out for it as well. But anyways, moving on to our next poll, it says reports reveal that China has secretly sent more than 100 million in drones to Russia, and what are your thoughts? 81% said China needs to be sanctioned, 7% said unsure, 8% said China has the right to send, and 3% said, I'm neutral on this. And on this side of things, there's people that are going to make the argument that China has the same right that the United States has to send weapons to their respective side. But here's the catch, though. Russia wrongfully invaded Ukraine, not the other way around. So China is supporting the aggressor here that made the first bad move and went and invaded a sovereign country, which is illegal and wrong. And we're supporting the country trying to defend their sovereign territory. So we're in the right, China's in the wrong. And they're supplying a ton of equipment to Russia, more than we thought originally. And we finally have some more concrete proof proving that. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, first off, I was actually distracted there because that PSA is important. To clarify how this channel works, so that way we can make it clear for everyone, we are only monetized through ways that you can see in the descriptions of videos, or through YouTube itself. For example, the Super Chats, which you can see some at the very top of the live chat right now. Another way that we are monetized is through Patreon, but here's the catch with Patreon. The Patreons are not attached to the stream. They are only attached to our war summary videos, and that is a separate fund where you can support our Patreon and help to make our video projects possible. So we try and separate the funding based on what it's supposed to be for. That's why you never see the Patreon linked on our live streams, but you see the Patreon linked to our normal videos. So, if y'all are ever wondering, why is there a Patreon there and not on the stream? That's why. We do not have a WhatsApp. We have never had a WhatsApp, and we will never be going around and soliciting people for them to send money to us through WhatsApp. If y'all want to send money, y'all can by all means, but we are never going to be badgering people or harassing people personally to try and support us. That's something that we never have done, and we also don't even have a WhatsApp to begin with. Also, another thing that is usually kept on the down low, and it's a deliberate thing by us, is that we do have a PayPal. However, for you to get access to our PayPal or to send anything to our PayPal, you have to ask us on request, and then we give you the PayPal information. So you actually have to directly ask us over our Twitter DMs for our PayPal, and then we give it to you. There's never going to be a time where we just float around and go, hey, give us money in our PayPal. We're never doing that. And I want to make that clear.
And also, I can warn about this as well. If they're doing that in their comments, I can guarantee you that they're going to be spoofing our email at some point and sending out emails probably to try to get your contact info that way as well. So here's a general rule. We're never going to reach out to anyone asking for any information from you ever. If anyone ever does that, it's automatically a scam.
And that is completely true. And so, of course, want to lay it out again for everyone. That's how we run our channel. That's how we make a living and do this as a job. And that's how it works. So if you ever see it, if you ever see someone impersonating the enforcer or saying they're the enforcer, and they are going to you and asking you to give them money, that is not us at all. Also, speaking of which, I'm seeing something that some people are starting to point out a little bit. It appears that there is an impersonator of a channel old guard in our live chat right now. I'm not really sure if they are. It appears that their profile picture has changed, but it looks like it may be an impersonator of Jesus UCSB. I don't know if that is an impersonator.
I was trying to figure out if that was a fake. I couldn't tell.
I've seen some people pointing it out because I saw Jesus UCSB in here earlier with his profile picture, and also his name was a little different, and now I'm seeing a different Jesus UCSB in here with no profile picture, and his name is a little different. So if the real Jesus UCSB could say hello in the live chat real quick, hopefully we can see if there is an impersonator here or not, and if there is, we're going to get rid of him. But anyways, clearing up all of that, so that way we don't have all of that happening in the background. I hope we addressed all that fairly well. And can you reread that poll again, Matthew?
It was about China sending the 100 million in drones to Russia.
I would say they should be sanctioned. And anyways, we're kind of moving in that direction already. And hopefully we'll find out if that is an impersonator or not here in a minute, because I see a lot of people going, wait a minute, there's an impersonator? Yeah, it looks like there is. But anyways, I think that we should sanction them. It's starting to move and in that direction. So I would certainly say that it's possible that that we could sanction them. I think it's something we should actually do. And so with that, I hope that does address that poll fairly well while it completely fell apart there. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And I just had to make a very difficult choice. It has me choked up. I had to get rid of Jesus UCSB, the fake. He's gone.
Oh, wait a minute. Did you see the real one?
I didn't see the real one, but I can tell you that's the fake right there, because Jesus has a profile picture and this one did not.
Hopefully he didn't get rid of his profile picture for no reason and then we just banned him. Hopefully that's not the case. We'll find out eventually though. But with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well. And we are on to the next one. I'm trying to see. You know what, Matthew? I think we'll appeal that for just a minute.
Don't do it. It's a fake.
Well, you know, I haven't seen the real Jesus UCSB pop up though. You know what? I'm going to take
I wouldn't undo that.
Hang on. I'm going to do something here real quick to see if we have a way to see if Jesus UCSB is here right now. So let me go through.
We can check it out after stream if you want. It was definitely a troll. Like I'm very convinced.
It looks like there's only one Jesus UCSB though that is a participant on the channel right now in the live chat, and it's that one.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
So,
let's leave that. Let's let it stand because that one was trolling.
All right, and so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so let me try to get my place back here real quick. Let's see here. Let me type one thing into the chat here for a second. Let's see. Blah, blah, blah. Usually don't do this, but I got backed up there for just a second on the chats. And moving on to our super chat questions, because we're fresh out of polls. The first one goes to Joseph Andronako, who puts in a very generous $200 donation.
Moly.
And thank you very much, Joseph, for the massive super chat, by the way. He says, been here for a while and finally figured out how to donate. Happy belated birthday, Matt, and good luck in law school, and really enjoy your talks and analysis. And thank you very much, Joseph. And also, it has been a little while since my birthday now, a few days now. And thank you very much for the belated birthday. I did have a good one. Sadly, though, I didn't sound too upbeat then because my cough and sickness was still kind of swinging pretty hard. But now I'm feeling a little bit better, knock on wood, and hopefully I'll keep recovering. But Enforcer, what say you?
I've got to thank you so much for the massive amount of support, Joseph, and helping this channel to keep on running. That is huge support. And it, of course, helps the stream to keep on rolling. And without folks like you, this live stream, this channel wouldn't have been possible. We wouldn't have been able to run it for as long as we have been, and we wouldn't have been able to keep this thing running. And also, Matthew, I hope you're noticing the large amount of bots. If you need help, let me know. But
No, I don't.
But anyways, I got to thank you so much once again for the huge support, and it means a lot to us that folks enjoy the channel enough that they find it worthwhile to support us. And it's been an absolutely unbelievable journey. And of course, some of y'all know, because y'all are here for the Sunday fundraiser, that we will eventually be rolling back streams a little bit, to a small degree. We actually, to be quite honest with y'all, we said on Sunday that we're going to be most likely doing weekend streams, and that's a guarantee. There will always be a Saturday and Sunday stream. But we don't really know what the weekdays are going to be looking like right now, because law school begins at 8 in the morning, and then it goes all the way till about 4 in the afternoon, almost every single day. And so we're trying to figure out how in the world do we manage that, because we start working on these streams at 5 o'clock, and the commute to law school will most likely be an hour and a half. And so that means I'll be getting back 30 minutes late, and then I'll have to try and rush to create a stream, and then run a stream until most likely 12 o'clock at night, and then around 2 o'clock, after the coffee wears off, go to sleep, and then wake up at 6 in the morning. So I will only get 4 hours of sleep every single day, 6 days a week. And that's kind of the problem that we're seeing right now. If we can find a way to fix that issue, and we are able to run more live streams during the week, we will. We will most likely be trying to run 3 or 4 streams a week. But at the moment, at the beginning of law school, we're only going to be doing the 2 on the weekends, at least for a week or 2, to see how everything's working. And then we'll start to try and figure out how to flesh out the live stream schedule again. One thing I want to make clear, though, is that we are not quitting. That's something that we're certainly not doing. I have to make that clear because some people take it as we're quitting. We are not quitting. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the mass amount of support, Joseph, and helping this channel to keep on rolling, because folks like you have made it possible for 517 days and will help us to continue to make this thing possible for another 517 days if we need to. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $100 super chat, also very generous, from Cindy Mitchell. And thank you very much, Cindy, as always, for that support. And she says, Private Tucker reporting in. And happy birthday, Sir Enforcer Matt. And thank you very much, Cindy, for the belated birthday as well. It feels like a whole new birthday for me with all these belated birthdays coming in. But also, hello to Tucker as well. And it's good to see you both. And Enforcer, what say you?
And thank you so much once again for the massive amount of support, Cindy. And also, hello to Tucker as well. I hope it's good to hear that both of y'all are here. And also, thank you so much once again for supporting this channel, and also wishing Matthew a happy birthday. That happened a few days ago, but hey, he's still happy to receive the birthday wishes. And I gotta thank you so much once again for joining us tonight, Cindy, as well as Tucker. I think Tucker is one of our youngest members of the Lee Spring Army, for being here tonight and once again watching this news, because tonight is certainly a pretty big day as far as the news has gone, even on the front lines itself, which we'll be getting to here in a moment. But with that, thank you so much once again for the mass amount of support. Hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our last one here, excuse me, goes to Duncan VR, who puts in a very generous $60 donation as well. And thank you very much, Duncan, for the support. And of course, it is Matt's time to get humbled for the night. And Duncan says, Bamuba, moo rough. Good luck with law school. Meow, wink. Hope you can still manage a weekly news update. Meow, woof. You guys gonna be busy. Baba, no sleep. Oink, oink. Oh, man, I'm telling you. Oink, oink, oink. Oh, man, I'm telling you. No respect. I'm telling you. Baba, woof. Man, I really do get no respect around here. I'm telling you.
Oh, man, I'm telling you. Oh, man, the other day I went down to the store and someone said, hey, I know you. Actually, funnily enough, y'all may get a laugh out of this. I was at a gun store today, and I was in there, and I was sitting, I was in there just doing my thing, and I actually ended up, y'all wouldn't believe this was amazing. I ended up getting a Swiss Vetterli rifle from the 1880s for $180, which is a steal. Like, if y'all know about those things, they don't even make ammo for them anymore, but they usually go, from what I've seen, for about $460 to $500. I got it for $180. I was flipping out over that. That was incredible. But another thing that happened is that there was a guy in there, and he was looking at scopes, I believe, or something like that. And he actually watches the Ukraine war stuff, and I think he said something along the lines of he knew about this channel in passing, and he ended up subscribing to the channel while I was there, and I told him a little bit about it. So, pretty cool. I was like, that's pretty neat. He was like, I think I've heard about you, and I was like, maybe you have, but that was really cool. And also, Thank you so much once again for the support, Duncan. I mean, we get no respect around here, but every once in a while we do get a little bit of respect. Although the guy did say our thumbnails could use a little bit of work, but you know, this guy.
What?
Look, this
Man,
guy.
we have click-through rates of like 20% on the last video you just put up. Mine had like 12%, and on a good day, according to what I saw on Twitter, it looks like Mr. Beast on a good day video is like 9% from what I saw.
Well, yeah, I mean that's true, and also I think the click through on this one today was like 22%, so it's huge.
Man, it was legendary today on this one. Like you really got some good click through on that one.
Oh, I did, and let me pat myself on the back. Thank you. But anyways, I of course have to thank you so much for the support, Duncan BR. Of course, throwing in the usual animal noises that everybody knows at this point, the Bakhmubas and all that stuff. But I also have to thank you so much once again for always being here with us, Duncan. You've been an old guard of this channel and have been with us through and through thick and thin. And I've got to thank you so much once again for supporting this channel and helping us to keep this thing running. Because without folks like you, this channel wouldn't be possible. And so thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we're now going to be moving on out of the location unknowns and the question segment. And we're now going to be moving on into the Northeastern front. The Northeastern, what the hell is that? The Northeastern front is a front that appears to actually have some frontline changes in it. And I've got to brace y'all because for one of the first times ever, we are actually seeing frontline changes that are being brought about by the Russians instead of the Ukrainians at this point in the war. And so here they are. That right there is the frontline change. And I have to admit, this is a far larger frontline move than we've seen over previous months. This is probably the largest individual push we've seen by the Russians in the past few months. Of course, that's no point of concern. This area is nothing but forests, and it appears to not even have major roadways inside of it, so it's not incredibly serious. And also, they liberated 3 villages. Well, they occupied 3 villages today. I'm so used to talking about the Ukrainians liberating villages, I just said the Russians liberated a village. But let me move down here, and let me make sure I'm getting into the right area. It's right outside of Svatove. So it would be about right here. So let me see if I can find you all the villages here. So we have Serhivka, Nadia, and also Novoikhorivka. And so let's take a look at these villages and let's see what they liberated. All right, so first one, Serhivka, appears to literally just be trees. There's not even a house there, so that's not technically a village. That's just there by name. Nadia appears to be a farm, maybe, and that's about it. And then also a shed down here. So there's the other town that they supposedly liberated today. And then finally down here, Novoikhorivka appears to be a few houses along a dirt road, and that's it. And so those are the massive gains that the Russians have made today, is that they liberated one non-existent village, another farmhouse, and maybe what can be considered a hamlet, maybe. Also, there's the real Jesus.
The real Jesus is here. What do you know? Look at that.
He's here. You wouldn't believe it, Jesus. You've become so popular, apparently, that people are starting to infamous. That people are starting to impersonate you. We just had to ban someone before you showed up again. But anyways, those are the advances that the Russians have made. We have not had any video footage from what appears to be these advances today. It appears to be areas nearby, but not from that advance itself. And once again, I have to say, I have absolutely no idea, trying to crystal ball this thing, where this is heading. I have absolutely no clue, because I don't know where it could be going. I mean, unless if they're going to push all the way through the countryside to Borova, and then they don't even really have a road access to Borova, that's really the only thing I could see them doing. Maybe they couldn't be looking to go south because there's just nothing south. They would just aimlessly wander southwards to the Oskil Reservoir, and then that doesn't really mean anything either. So I don't know what they're trying to do with this offensive, but it's one where they've actually made a little bit of ground. I don't know what the Ukrainian response will be at this point, because this just happened today, but we'll be waiting to see what the Ukrainians are doing. Meanwhile, in the southern front, we have seen, near the area of Mykolaiivka, the 67th conducting a nighttime attack on Russian forces in the area. And we've got some pixie dust Disney music playing, as we now see the 67th slamming some Russians on the side of this road.
Somebody said, "What's the name of the war game you're playing?" Oh, this isn't a game, but this is real.
Man, this is a game called Life, and it's a pretty cruel one. I'm not going to lie. But we can see the Russians getting splattered, and absolutely blasted. And there's another little mortar blast right there hitting onto the Russian position. But we sadly really can't tell what kind of damage is actually being caused by these mortar hits. It appears that it's hitting right onto their position, but we can't tell how many troops are being lost in this video. And so with that, that's the end of the clip, but a little look at the 67th Brigade laying down some fire onto Russian forces. Moving on from that and towards the area of Milovatka, we also saw in this area a Ukrainian FPV drone apparently had a very narrow miss of a Russian tank that was firing at Ukrainian forces. And so here's the clip. Of course, by the way, this is one of the few things that the Russians can actually brag about is this miss. And, you know, beyond that, I don't even know what there was to brag about this, but it's an interesting clip. When you see the tank fire, and it's now reloading. And here comes the drone, and sadly, it appears to have literally just missed by inches. It flew right over the cope cage, right over the tank, and then exploded under the barrel. Right there. Throwing around the camo net, but beyond that, unfortunately, the tank remained intact. We now see the tank commander giving the order for the tank to reverse, like that's going to fix anything, because this is the fastest it can go in reverse. They're now firing as they reverse off the field. And that's the end of the clip. Unfortunate to see the Ukrainians miss that one. Usually they hit. That one was literally just inches off, and if it had just been a little bit lower, it at least would have hit the cope cage and probably caused some kind of damage to the optics on top of the turret, maybe, but sadly that wasn't the case. Those are the only clips we have from the northeastern area, and hopefully the Ukrainians can stabilize the situation that is happening just southwest of Svatove. Moving on out of the northeastern area and further south towards the direction of Bakhmut, we also saw some fairly interesting developments here. Starting off inside of the city itself, we got to see the electronic warfare vehicle, one of the 3 that was destroyed today, being destroyed on film. Have you ever wanted some fast rock music to accompany your electronic warfare vehicle being destroyed? Well, then I got news for you, buddy. Check it out as they destroy this grad after they took out that EWV. Look at that, hitting that grad dead on. Take another look at this Russian outpost set up in the trees. Oh, buddy, are they about to get hit, and hit hard. Now take a look at all of these BMPs. Wow, absolutely amazing. Take a look at them getting absolutely obliterated in a single shot. Wow, look at that. Look at them hitting an electronic warfare tower. Damn. Where'd you find this?
Damn, son, where'd you find this?
Take a look at
Walk
that.
with your boys.
We make it look easy.
Trample Holly. Oh.
Whoa.
That sound effect went right along with it.
That's such a fun with that. That's the end of that clip, and very nice to see that the airborne reconnaissance was able to call in a little artillery strike and a couple of vehicles and was able to take them on out. With that, we're now going to be moving on into the frontline analysis in Bakhmut. And we've been getting some juice, fellas. We've been getting some real juice as Jesus UCSB, the real one, stands up and also throws in a super chat. But what we've seen is something big. Deep State UA has confirmed that Andriivka is a battlefield right now. We were speaking about this on Sunday. Andriivka was actually taken on Sunday. Deep State is a little bit slow with updating, but it is completely understandable because the folks at Deep State, they're 2 brothers just like Matthew and me, are trying to confirm the information as it comes out, and they want to make sure that the map is accurate, even if it means it's not instantaneous. Also, from what we heard, the Ukrainians made a breakthrough around the area of Klishkivka today and may be pushing through the fields towards Zaitseva. They may be. That's at least what we're kind of hearing at this moment. And so there are massive gains being made in the southern front by Ukrainian forces there, and funnily enough, that's where all of our videos came from today as well. Starting off with our first one of the 45th Brigade, the 45th Artillery, destroying some Strelas with their artillery fire. And so we can see the streak of the Strela's missile firing from the field, and we now see the drone trying to find where that missile streak came from, and aha, it's right there. And so now the drone has a location to call into the artillery, which it'll be doing promptly, and we can see that they've identified it as a Strela 10 at the bottom left. And we now see the Strela firing another missile. Don't really know what they're firing at, though. We haven't seen what they're firing at on film. And we now see the drone orbiting the area, making sure to call in the artillery. And we can now see what appears to be a direct hit to the Strela, which has now caused the ammunition to ignite, leading to the bright white puff of smoke and the subsequent destruction of the vehicle. Man, I sound like I'm describing a crime scene right now. The subsequent destruction of the vehicle. What the hell? That's it. I need to get rid of the nerd words. But anyways, we can see the Strela burning right there, and of course, another AA system knocked out. I have to admit, Strelas aren't the most advanced system on the field, and they're probably the only one that does not meet the $15 million rule that we have, but it is still an air defense system nonetheless, and great to see that it was destroyed. Moving on towards the area just south and east of Klishkivka, we also saw the Atom unit taking its turn destroying Russian forces in the area today. Take a look. And we're going to be muting that, but we can now see the drone flying on in. And we can see the Russian tank driving away, but sadly this won't be good enough, as the drone rams right into the back of the turret and takes out the tank, it appears. Atom Tactical Group. Tanky. Sheesh. I don't know. Anyways, they destroyed the tank. Great to see. And so with that, nice to see another $3.5 million tank destroyed by the Atom unit. And moving on to our next clip, we also saw another Russian tank burning up from an FPV attack. FPV attacks now appear to be the worst enemy of Russian armor. It appears to be claiming more of them than ATGM fire or anything similar. We can see the drone come in, losing signal as it gets pretty low to the ground, and now flying back over. It appears that it may have missed the tank. We can now see it coming in again and ramming right into the front side of the turret. We can see the explosion right there. And it appears that a fire has already broken out from inside the crew compartment. We can now see another drone coming in and hitting the rear engine bay of the tank. We can now see that explosion from the distance again, probably here in a second. Right there. And we can now see a larger fire breaking out in the engine bay.
I saw a W13RD guy say, "You guys checking into used textbooks?" Man, I haven't even checked into any textbooks. I need to do that. I'm glad you reminded me about that.
Man, that's a good point, actually. I actually have not done that either. But with that...
That'd be lovely. Show up on the first day, and you're already nervous enough showing up to a law school, which is going to be probably a grinding gruel process, and then you don't have a textbook.
What
That'd
is
be
wrong?
lovely.
Matthew, have you noticed that we have stopped speaking proper English? You just said grinding gruel. And like, I was like, I've done that like 7 times tonight now,
I'm
too.
trying to choke back a cough.
Man, I'm not even trying to choke back coughs. I'm just talking like that. But anyways, nice to see that they were able to take out a couple of Russian tanks. And also, thank you for notifying us about the whole textbook deal, because we actually need to get on top of that here, probably within like the next hour. But with it, well, actually not the next hour, because we got a show to run here. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on towards the area of Andriivka, where we saw the 3rd Brigade launching more trench assaults. Sadly, I won't be able to play the audio from this clip because it does have copyrighted music. You can hear it right there. So I won't be able to play the audio, but I will be able to show you all the video. Right here, we can see a Mista S roaring up the engine and getting ready to go to work. We can now see a 3rd Brigade outpost where they have set up a drone operating station. This almost looks like one of those gaming arcades that they use at the tournaments. We can now see the Mista S firing the gun. And we can now see the artillery hitting the Russians in the distance. Most likely the Ukrainians are hitting them with a captured Mista S, which adds a lot of irony to it. And we can now see a Russian squad moving through the fields. Information idiots, my father standing in column. We can now see a grad on the move. And look at this guy, dude. That guy is an entire mood right there, man. Look at him. It may be water, but I'm relaxing. You know what I mean?
Looking straight down, almost straight down the barrel of that tube right there.
Man, it's not like it's going to fire. And anyways, if they got hit where that thing did fire, I guess it wouldn't be his problem anymore. So he's just chilling. And we can now see the grad firing. Hopefully we'll see the impacts here in a moment. And we can now see the grad impacts in the distance, and we now see the 3rd Brigade moving up after the barrage and beginning to clean out Russian positions in this tree line, most likely near Andriivka. You got nowhere to go, you efforts. You give up? No, you... Oh, I can't read that. We now see him... Oh, man, what the hell? Dude, this guy is kitted to the nines. Look at this.
Let's see, he's got an EOTech XPS-3. He's got the little maul. Is that the maul on the front? Vertical foregrip. That's just pretty loaded out.
I mean, that is loaded out. That is very loaded out. And he's even got the whole thing, like, either painted or Cerakoted. I can't really tell. In short, F you. You made your choice. And then some unknown word. Don't you want to give up? Get the tank out there. Let the tank come out right on them. So once it'll leave, and then Sheris asks what he was like. Show me what you're doing. And now we can see him reading a book, because learning is important. But you now see the tank racing down the field to run the Russians out of the positions, and it appears that is quite effective, as we can now see the Russians picking up and running for the hills. Now here comes the Ukrainian tank, rolling through the trees, and running them on out of the positions. I swear we've seen something similar to this a while ago. But no, this appears to be a different clip, because we're not seeing them running out of the trenches while the tank is moving around. So yes, considering that the engineering equipment is broken, engineering work is carried out by the tank. Okay, now we can see the Russians running, so this is actually some older footage here in this clip. And keeping that in mind, we're actually going to be moving on, because while I was showing the control room at the same time this was happening, it's something that is kind of a little redundant, to be honest with y'all. So with that, we're going to be moving on from that clip, but great to see that the 3rd Brigade was able to take Andriivka today, and hopefully that will lead to a breakthrough heading towards the direction of Zaitsevo, cutting off the Russians inside of Bakhmut from reinforcements heading south, well, coming up from the north. Wait, no. Let me think that out. America can be described in one word! So, reinforcements coming from the south, heading north to Bakhmut will be cut off. There we go. That's what we're trying to say. English. And so, we're now going to be moving on from the Bakhmut area. Of course, great to see the advances in that direction today. And we're now going to be moving on down into Donetsk. Over the past 48 hours, we haven't seen any real frontline developments in this area. However, we did get one video from Donetsk where we could hear a large artillery barrage going on in the distance. I mean, listen to those guns roar, bleed. Don't bless. He just says that in the middle of the screen. And we can also see an artillery explosion out there in the distance near that slag heap. And so with that, that's the end of that clip right there. But love to see that they were able to make sure to hit something inside of Donetsk. We don't know what it was, but they did hit something. And so we're now going to be moving on into the Southern Front. And also, Carter, the answer to that's no. But moving on into the Southern Front, and covering the past last 48 hours of news there, although we only have the past 24 hours in picture and video evidence, here's what the Southern Front has been looking like over the past 48 hours. We've seen that Deep State UA has recorded an advance by Ukrainian forces near the area of Robotne. However, according to Live UA map, Robotne has been captured for nearly a week at this point. So it appears that Deep State UA may be a little bit behind the curve in updating that information, or Live UA is wrong, one or the other. But that's one of the few advances we've seen in the Southern Front, but we got a lot of clips showing action from Ukrainian forces across the entire line of contact in this area. Moving on to our first clip near Novomayorsk, we saw a small nuclear explosion created by 50 Russian anti-tank mines. And let me make this clear, no, it's not a nuke. It just looks like a nuke, and so it's a figure of speech. Call me Christopher Nolan, because we're going Oppenheimer up in here. Now, here's the mines, there's the bomblet. They're going to connect in a minute, and we're about to see a small nuclear explosion. I wanted them to feel the nuclear explosion, said Christopher Nolan as we watched this pile of mines go up in a ball of fire.
Oh, bliat.
Oh, bliat, man.
Man, I gotta say, I don't know if people are trying to do it on purpose, but people in the chat are making me nervous as hell about law school, what they're saying about, like, the reading and everything about it.
Man.
I don't know if they're doing that to scare us intentionally or what.
I wouldn't worry about it,
Oh, man, I'm telling you.
Oh, man, I'm telling you. I'm sweating bullets over here. Oh, man, I'm telling you. But with that, they're really scaring me, too. I'm not going to lie. I'm trying not to sweat it. But
I cannot lie. I've been very apprehensive and a little bit nervous about starting law school. Like, I'm excited for it, but at the same time, it's a it's kind of intimidating, the undertaking is. I'm sure a lot of other people felt that way, apparently, from what I'm seeing in the live chat as well. But, you know, you got to man up and get with it.
You got to do it. You got to do it. We got to do it. You see, because the thing is, like, you know, it's very easy. I'll say this real quick. It's very easy for people in the live chat to tell us, why don't you just keep doing YouTube? The problem with that, though, is that the process to even get into law school is a very lengthy one. Like, our process of getting to law school, at least for me, it took about a year. Actually, it's lasted as long as the stream has. I think, yeah, I took the LSAT like 20 days into the war, and that was crazy in its own right, because I was studying for the LSAT and also doing this and also going to college in person. So that was a nightmare to conduct all that at the same time, and somehow I ended up still making a decent score on the LSAT, so I was pretty happy about that. But the thing is, you can't just go and walk off, because it took so much to get to law school that you can't just sit there and go, you know, I'm just going to find my soul or something like that, you know, whatever people say when they're trying to get a bachelor's or something in normal college. You've got to go. Like, it's just taken so much time and effort to do this, you have to do it now. There's just really no backing out. But with that, we're now going to be moving on to our next clip in the southern front near Malanivka, where we saw some Ukrainian soldiers conduct a medical evacuation. It was very well planned and pulled off. And so with that, here's the clip. And also, we're going to have to be muting it because it's using inspiring copyright-free music, but I don't really know if it's copyright-free. And we can now see the Ukrainians attaching a water bottle. I believe it has information in it, so that way the Ukrainians can get the water bottle and read the information. And we can now see them on the move. We now see the soldier drinking some water out of his pack, and we can also see some additional wounded Ukrainian soldiers out there in the field. We can now see them attaching another message and flying it out there to the Ukrainian soldiers, and once again dropping it, so that way the wounded soldiers can receive the information and start to know what is about to happen and what they need to be doing to prepare for it. We now see them dropping some food, I believe it is, and also some additional supplies. And with that, that's the end of the clip. But they were actually able, after this clip, to successfully evacuate those Ukrainian soldiers from the battlefield. Apparently, it was a small recon squad or detail that apparently got ambushed in the field and were not really able to leave the position. And so they just laid in the weeds after being wounded. All of them were wounded. And then the Ukrainian unit that they were attached to organized this relief effort of small amounts of food and water to be dropped off to them along with information, and then eventually prepare the breakout so that way they could recover these soldiers. And somehow they actually ended up getting all of them out without sustaining a casualty, although sadly we weren't able to see that on film. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on into the area of Huilopol, where we saw that the Sheikh Mansour was firing at the Russians today. And so here's the clip. Sadly, the the video quality is poor enough that I really can't tell what kind of weapon that is. Maybe an SPG-9. I'm putting money on it's an SPG-9 because the Sheikh Mansour loves these things. Yep, it's an SPG-9. I got it right on the money. We see him with a firing cord right here. And we now see them moving around again. It appears that they're still preparing the SPG-9 for firing. And it looks like they may be trying to adjust the piece. We now hear them firing, and firing right there. Smoke filling the area. And we now see that from another angle. My ears split! What was that noise? Well, you now see the drone operator over here trying to see if the fire is accurate, and now we're getting to see what the drone operator is looking at. Sadly, can't read the subtitles here, unfortunately. And it looks like the drone is zooming in on a specific spot that may be where the SPG-9 hit. It looks like there's a little bit of smoke coming from that part of the tree line. And we now see a monster soldier walking up with his face blurred out. That confused me for a minute. We now see them firing the SPG-9 again.
It went quiet, bleed.
And now we can just see this guy out here, just laying. We now see the SPG-9 firing again. Slava Ukraini. And we now see where the hit is, where the X mark was. X marks the spot, after all. We now see them firing the SPG-9 again. And we now see the hit again. And it appears that they have finally dialed it in to where they need, because all the rounds are hitting in the same spot. We now hear some artillery fire in the distance. Clearly not from their unit. And we now see them transporting the SPG-9 back to the truck. Putting it on in there with the tripod attached.
Под сапог? Давай подниму. А под сапог не будешь? Не. Давай.
We now see them hopping in the back of the truck and getting ready to leave. And with that, that's the end of the clip. But there was a little bit of a look at the Sheikh Mansour operating their SPG-9s. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on down to the area of Robotny, where we got a lot of Bradley action today. We actually got to see a Bradley deploy a smoke screen. Some of y'all have never seen this, and it's something that was rarely ever filmed, interestingly enough. But this is what a smoke grenade discharger does when it fires off its smoke grenades. So here's the clip. You can see the Bradley down there. And we now see the smoke grenades firing off in front of the Bradley. To explain what these are, they are white phosphorus grenades. And that's the kind of smoke that white phosphorus creates. And we now see the smoke shield concealing the Bradley, as it's now still sitting there. And it appears, wait, hang on. It appears that something may have hit near it or on it. And let me see, before FPV drone misses its target. So apparently, due to the smoke screen, the FPV drone flew through it and missed, and we can actually see that here. The Bradley was actually missed by several feet, and the explosion just kicked up the stand near the Bradley. So very lucky, and that was a really good call by the Bradley operator to fire off the smoke grenade discharger, because that apparently saved the Bradley from getting a direct hit from a drone. And considering that that drone may have been carrying an RPG-7, the Bradley probably wouldn't have survived that. So that was really cool, actually, to see that in action, and that shows you how effective smoke screens like that can be for armored vehicles. Moving on from that, we also got some more footage from the 47th Brigade showing their Bradleys operating in the same area.
Рухай
Рухаємось до зеленки, рухаємось до зеленки. Рухаємося. Повзем туди.
Here's some firefights going on. It appears that this guy has like an M16A2? Maybe? I can't really tell. And we now see the Bradley rolling ahead and firing, and a second Bradley coming up, also firing as well. We now see the soldier getting out of the MRAP again. Closing the vault doors on that thing. Wait, is this a Reaper? Hold up.
So.
Wait, we just...
Also, it's a Magpul. Look at that.
Yeah, it's a Magpul. And also, goofy me, we were watching a Twitter clip. I didn't realize it. We just watched it loop. I thought it was a Reddit clip, so I thought it would just end at the end of it. But anyways, that was a clip of the Bradleys in action. Great to see, and also wonderful to know that the 47th Brigade is using so much American equipment, and a lot of it, of course, emphasizes crew survivability. With that, we're now going to be moving on a little bit behind the lines to Yurkivka, where we saw some damaged MRAPs that have done their job well, saving their crew, but of course taking the hit. And I'll have to mute that. But we can see the damaged MRAPs all over the place through here. And of course, the Ukrainians will be trying to pull these behind the lines to repair them if possible, and if not, they'll most likely be cannibalizing them for spare parts for the other MRAPs. But still, great to see that all of these MRAPs were able to do their job well. We're now going to be moving on out of the southern front area and down into Kherson. And in this little clip down here, we got to see a Gyansen destroyed along with its ammunition. Beyond that, nothing eventful happened in Kherson, but here's the clip. Oh, we're getting jiggy with it, eh? But anyways, there's the shell hitting the Gyansen. And we can now see the ammunition going up. We can see the Gyansen right there, right in front of the ammunition fire. And we now see the vehicles on the move. And with that, that's the end of the clip. But amazing to see that the Ukrainians were able to take out that Gyansen. Of course, credit to the 73rd Naval Infantry Brigade for getting that done. And so with that, it is now time for us to move to Kyiv to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. And without further ado, here is the speech. Speech! And I bet you it's track 1.
Good health to
Yeah, get it over to that freaking Ukrainian track. And get the English subtitles up here.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці, українки. Сьогодні був довгий і насичений подіями день. Цей день почався рано і вже звичною нашою роботою над отриманням зброї, нових пакетів оборонної підтримки, зокрема американської. Я вдячний за сьогоднішній пакет, артилерія, ракети для хаймарсів, петріотів, насамсів, дрони і багато усього іншого. Дякую, Америко. Говорив із прем'єр-міністром Великої Британії Ріші Сунаком, як і завжди, цілком практична розмова, чітка. Першочергова про захист наших південних районів, зокрема Одеси, нормального життя людей та роботи наших портів. Ми обговорили з Ріші можливі кроки, можливу кількість батарей ППО. Сполучене Королівство може стати тим лідером, чия допомога системами ППО гарантуватиме реальну безпеку. Світ знає, що з безпеки наших чорноморських портів починається спокій та стабільність на світовому продовольчому ринку. Зараз той час, коли важливо зібрати врожай рішучості, безпекової рішучості, щоб згодом нікому не довелось опинитись в ролі збирачів врожаю хаосу, ані в країнах Африки, ані будь-де на інших континентах. Продовольча безпека – це глобально важливий пріоритет і частина української формули миру. Провів сьогодні і підготовчу нараду перед першим засіданням Ради Україна-НАТО, яке відбудеться вже завтра. Консультації щодо питання саме безпеки в Чорному морі, наших портів та нашого зернового експорту. Вже почали і підготовку разом з Альянсом, підготовку плану взаємосумісності. Друга нарада з урядовцями та представниками Верховної Ради України щодо європейської інтеграції, необхідних кроків, саме тих рішень, які мають бути прийняті, щоб дати старт переговорам про членство України в Євросоюзі. Хоч і не публічна, але все ж таки стратегічно важлива подія. Урядовці представили результати першого року армії дронів. Вже не проєкту, а реальної української армії дронів. Відбулася презентація різних видів українських дронів, які використовуються для оборони, а також зустріч з виробниками, проєктувальниками, донорами. Журналісти та представники громадянського суспільства мали змогу побачити, який потенціал досягнутий за перший рік армії дронів та як армія буде збільшуватись. Абсолютно потрібні обороні всі дрони, від доволі простих мавіків до морських дронів та ударних дронів, які здатні діяти на великій відстані. До речі, часто на ставці ми обговорюємо цю тематику і часто на підвищених тонах, але результати є, і це можна побачити в новинах. Хороші новини із застосуванням українських дронів будуть частіше, і це принципово. Ще одне принципово. Мільйони українців, українок, день за днем, добу за добою, максимальне зосередження на одному. Не на собі, не на своїх якихось там бажаннях, а на захисті держави і життя. Але, на жаль, деяким особам здається, що війна десь там, десь далеко від них, ніби купол Верховної Ради, чи стіни якихось там кабінетів, чи перелік якихось там повноважень можуть закрити від реальності. Ніхто не пробачить ані депутатам, ані суддям, ані воєнкомам, чи будь-яким іншим посадовцям протиставлення себе державі. Комусь там острови та курорти під час війни, комусь там заробіток у воєнкоматі, комусь хабарі державних посадовців – це зрада державних принципів, це зрада інтересів суспільства. Я хочу всіх депутатів, чиновників та всіх інших на державних посадах попередити. Коли днями шукаєш зброю для держави, коли вся увага тому, щоб була артилерія, були ракети, дрони, коли бачиш постійно, відчуваєш постійно, яку моральну силу здобули для України наші воїни, наші люди, які роблять все можливе і неможливе для перемоги і збереження свободи, тоді будь-яке внутрішнє зрадництво, будь-який пляж чи будь-яке особисте збагачення замість інтересів України викликають щонайменше лють. Лють. Запам'ятайте це. Уявіть, скільки мільйонів сердець в Україні відчули таку ж лють. Я хочу, щоб мене зараз почули всі депутати, всі посадовці. Ви повинні працювати в Україні та заради інтересів українського народу. Я вдячний тим депутатам, які дійсно займаються інтересами держави, а ті, хто думають, як би побільше часу провести за кордоном та шукають собі вигідні відрядження, щоб можна було їх поєднати з бізнесом, з друзями чи пляжами, у вас таких не буде. Не буде і тих, хто через якісь там свої вигоди не хоче приймати рішення, які необхідні для нашої оборони чи для європейської інтеграції. Кожен закон, який потрібен, щоб посилити позиції наших воїнів, повинен бути ухвалений. Кожен закон, який потрібен, щоб Україна почала переговори з ЄС щодо вступу, повинен бути ухвалений. І я більше не хочу чути жодних відмовок, і ніхто не хоче. Україна вам більше часу не дає. Якщо ви працюєте заради України, ви потрібні Україні. Якщо ні, то ні. Ще одне. Сьогодні представили мені деякі попередні результати перевірок інших воєнкомів, окрім колишнього одеського, і невтішні результати. І, звичайно, правоохоронці реалізують їх в законний спосіб, і суспільство все це побачить. Але я хочу сказати усім таким воєнкомам і будь-яким іншим чиновникам, які чомусь думають, що суспільство нібито просто почекає, нібито можна нахабнішити десь у тилу. Ми виграємо цю війну, яку почала Росія. І ми виграємо для України таке державне життя, яке буде гідним наших героїчних захисників, кожного і кожної, хто зараз всі свої сили віддає захисту. Негідним в такому житті місця немає. І останнє. Я підписав сьогодні 2 укази про нагородження наших воїнів, 649 захисників і захисниць України відзначені державними нагородами. Із них 218, на жаль, посмертно. Всі мають пам'ятати, чого вартує державність, свобода та гідність. Слава Україні!
And with
Heroem
that,
Slava.
and Slava Ukraini. And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, and that is the beginning of something grand and something new. A lot of y'all, of course, have been going 100 miles an hour in the live chat and talking about a lot of the things that have happened in today's war. And I've also seen a lot of questions saying, has he addressed the ship yet? Yes, it's at the very beginning of the stream. So just go back to the very beginning when we did our intro, and you'll see it. But anyways, a lot of y'all have been talking about a lot of the other bits of news that we've been covering here over the past about 40 minutes or so. And a lot of y'all have had some very interesting points to bring up, and Matthew has put up polls to see what all of y'all are thinking and to gauge what the audience is talking and thinking about and what their opinions are on certain subjects going on in the war. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so we have several good polls to address in our last question segment. And the first one says the U.S., Britain, and others are warning Russia plans to attack civilian vessels in the Black Sea. And what are your thoughts? 70% said Russia will eventually carry it out. 17% said, they might, but it sounds iffy. 8% said unsure, and 5% said Russia would not do that. And on this one, I would have to say, with so many big nations, for example, the U.S. and Britain, among others, saying through their intelligence community that something is coming, I would have to say that if all of those are wrong, then they need to hang up their intelligence department. I think I'd put some stock in that, and it looks like Russia is preparing something. Now, on the nuclear power plant, that was another issue that I think the U.S. had said there was an issue with or something, and it turned out not to be true, or at least the Russians changed their mind or something like that. But on this one, I think it's a little bit different. Some with the 70%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would also have to largely be with the 70% that this could be a bit of a serious issue, if I'm hearing that poll correctly.
I mean, is that your opinion?
Yeah, that would be my opinion. I'm just making sure that's what 70% said, though, because I was thinking, wait a minute, did I just get that right or wrong?
Yes, that's the 70% said that Russia will carry it out.
And I think they possibly will try. And I have to say this. Usually I'm into, usually we condemn everything the Russians do. However, there are ways that they could legally destroy merchant ships in the Black Sea. For example, if they enter Ukrainian waters, that's something that technically would be a green light to destroy those ships. If you ever remember the Falklands War, there was actually an exclusion zone created around the Falklands Islands where ships could not enter or leave without being considered military targets by both parties involved in that war, both Argentina as well as the United Kingdom. And a similar thing exists in the territorial waters of Ukraine. The Russians have declared war on Ukraine, and therefore they have the rights by maritime law to be able to destroy merchant ships that are trying to make their way into Ukrainian ports. Blockades are a natural part of war. So if they are preparing to destroy merchant ships that enter Ukrainian waters, that is something that they could actually follow through on, and there's really no way to conduct any repercussions. NATO would kind of be helpless at that point. They would have their hands tied, even if it was a flagged, say, Turkish ship, because they are inside of Ukrainian territorial waters, which NATO protections do not extend into the waters or territories of countries that are not inside of the NATO alliance. So that's something that the Russians could actually follow through on. It's a bit of a serious concern. And so with that, hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next poll says Russian Defense Minister Shoigu made an unusual appearance in North Korea today, and what are your thoughts? 82% said he's trying to get support, 7% said he's just stopping by for tea, 6% said it seems irrelevant, and 4% said unsure. And at this point, with Russia being so desperate for weapons, they're relying on China very heavily, as we found out for drones. It looks like they're going to North Korea to find some kind of other resources that they aren't able to get from China, would be my best guess. He definitely wasn't stopping by for tea, because it's kind of an unusual appearance for Shoigu himself to show up in North Korea. In fact, I'm not sure when that's ever happened, if any time, but Enforcer can correct me on that. So I'm with 82%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that it's a fairly interesting development that Shoigu, or anyone for that matter, would show up in North Korea, because usually it's Kims who travel out of Korea into Russia to meet the Russians. It's not the other way around. So this is a fairly rare occurrence, and I think it's trying to schmooze up the North Koreans to possibly get some military aid from them, or more military aid than they've been receiving at this point. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next poll says Ukraine says it plans to attack the Kerch Bridge again. Excuse me. And is Ukraine bluffing or serious? It looks like 74% said Ukraine is serious. It's coming soon. 13% said I really can't tell, but possible. 9% said Ukraine is bluffing and scaring Russia, and 4% said unsure. And on this one, excuse me, damn, that cough. But anyways, on this one, I'd have to say that I think Ukraine might actually be bluffing. So I'm actually with the 9%, because if Ukraine had the ability to do so right now, or they had some reason or ability to get it done, I think they would just simply do it without talking about it. But right now, it looks like they're not, and they're just basically scaring the Russians into every single day, shutting the bridge down because they think an attack is coming. So it seems to be working in one respect, and there might be an attack coming later, but it's kind of too early to tell. Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, it's in second. I would also have to say that I think they actually have the ability to attack, and I think they're trying out an interesting strategy of damaging the bridge enough that it's down for repairs, but not destroying it completely. So that way the Russians are always caught in a constant state of repairing it, instead of them destroying an entire bridge segment, and then the Russians rebuild that from the ground up, and then the Ukrainians have to expend more explosives and more firepower to destroy the bridge again. So they're using less firepower to kind of achieve the same results without completely destroying the bridge outright. So I think they do have the ability. They're just waiting for the right time again to destroy it and then partially knock it out. Well, knock it out, but partially where it isn't completely destroyed. And so with that, I hope that does address that poll, in my opinion, fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, with that being said, we are fresh out of polls once again while my mind goes blank. But we're moving back into our Super Chat questions. And up first, we have a very generous donation from the real Jesus UCSB. And he puts in a $100 donation. And thank you very much, Jesus, for that very generous support. And he says, Hola. He said, some were successful in shutting me down on Twitter. But no one stops this LSA tanker. And the real Jesus UCSB, LSA. Slava Ukraine and LSA for life.
And thank you so much for the support, JesusUCSB, and helping this channel to keep on running. And I have to say, nobody shuts down the Jesus UCSB. I haven't seen anyone do that successfully yet, and I think that's a huge testament to the Lee Spring Army and the folks who make it up, because without this community, this channel would be nothing. And I got to thank you so much once again for the massive amount of support, Jesus, and helping this thing to keep on rolling, because without folks like you, it wouldn't be possible. You've become such a famous or infamous member of the LSA that people are even coming in here and trying to impersonate you and hope that they can pull a fast one on everyone. It appears that they didn't succeed, though, because we kind of caught them quickly. But still, thank you so much once again, Jesus. I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the massive support.
Yes, indeed. And up next, we have a very generous $50 donation from Hal Rose. And thank you, Hal Rose, for that generous support, as always, and always supporting the channel. And we do notice and appreciate it. He said, Enforcer Matt, the reality of freshman year at law school will demand a lot of your time. And walk that path, do the work, and then think of us in the LSA. And your short summaries are current and concise, and you earn an A, and carry on. And Hal Rose, we have actually started already thinking about how to continue on our videos, because those will be still going on full-fledged. That is my plan, and also the Enforcer's plan as well. So we're working that around the schedule. Right now, it's just so uncertain because this is a totally new process to us, and apparently things have changed significantly since when our father went to law school, that we're really not sure what to expect. But I'm confident that we will overcome whatever it is, but, you know, the uncertainty does have us a little on edge, or at least me. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I got to thank you so much for the kind words as well, Hal Rose. And I also want everyone to know, it's not a funeral, y'all. We're not going away. This isn't like the farewell tour of the Enforcer channel. The Enforcer channel will continue to stay around. We'll stay around during law school. We'll always be making the video summaries. The reason why, and some of y'all are like, why in the world are y'all making video summaries but not live streams? Live streams take a lot of time, a load of time to make, because we try, well, I try and put in a lot of effort before the stream to make sure that we have things like maps, and then I go and adjust the front lines, and so I'm cross-referencing other maps, and then I'm also trying to draw little things on the map or change the status of supply lines, among a bunch of other things. And so it takes a lot of time to make these live streams happen. I start working on this thing at, let me try and think, it's like 5 o'clock in the afternoon every single day. I start working on this, and then it's ready for 9 o'clock, so there's about 4 hours of work there, and then we run a 3-hour stream, so that's about 7 hours, and then after that, I comb over analytics, try and respond to comments if I can, and also look over other stuff for the channel, and I usually do that until 1 or 2 in the morning. So it's about, let's see, that would be 4, 5, 6, 7, about 9 hours a day I spend doing this, just the live streams alone. And so it's a massive time sink, because, you know, you do that 6 days a week, 9 times 6. Hell if I know. 6 times 9. What is 6 times 9? That is like 52. 52 hours a week, just about, on this thing. And it takes a load of time. Videos actually take a little bit less time because we, one, don't have to gather up all of this news because we try and make the live streams as fleshed out as humanly possible. We try and gather every video and every clip that was pertinent or important. And that's also another time sink, is that sometimes I go through and I look at every single video clip that ever came out this day, anywhere that exists, Twitter, Reddit, you name it. And then I go through and I try and prioritize which ones are better to show and which ones are not better to show. And then I end up deleting some off the map and replacing them and a whole bunch of stuff like that. So it is a fairly laborious process to do this, and as you can tell, it takes up a lot of time, and that's time we may not have during law school. One, we'll have that time on the weekends, but we may not have that time during the weekdays to do something like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the videos instead, because the videos, I believe, they take about 2 hours to do each. So, 54 hours. A lot of y'all have corrected me on the math. It's 54 hours. 54 hours versus about, let's see here, 10 a week. And y'all can see why the videos are a lot more feasible to do long-term than to do the streams. We'll still be covering the Ukraine war day in and day out, every single day, in one way, shape, or form. But the live streams will have to be rolled back just due to the massive amount of time that they take. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, Jesus, and also Hal Rose as well. I hope that addressed that fairly well, Hal, and thank you so much once again for wishing us well in law school. We're not going to be gone. We're just going to have to roll back the streams a little bit, but I still thank you so much once again for wishing us the best, because hopefully we will be able to do fairly well. But we're not going to do well if there's math involved in law school, though. I would fail. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
Man, what if like one day, like, excuse me, if you're practicing law and your big case hinges on being able to answer a math question, it's going to get screwed over.
It will be screwed over badly. It'll be screwed over bigly. But still, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $25 donation from Drunky Monkey. And thank you very much for that support. It said, good day, guys, and keep up the good work. I got to get me a Shoigu.
Shoigu! And I thank you so much for the support, and also helping this channel to keep on running. I hope you enjoyed the Shoigu, because that is a little bit of a trademark on this channel at this point. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And Matthew, I saw something in live chat. I saw this. I got to read this one because it's funny to me. Fix the title because Romanian ship was hit in the Ukrainian port. So I'm supposed to write that in the title with a 100 character limit. That I'm not even going to have the room for that. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and also I see some folks saying some stuff here. I asked this a second ago to somebody who was a lawyer. I asked them if they had ever heard of a pop-tort, and I never got a response back. I don't know. I will go into law school. Put me up to this. I will go in there the first day and ask the professor what a pop-tort is, so that way I can be labeled the most stupid person in the class right off the bat.
Their expectations.
Enforcement needs to ask that too.
Yeah, I'm going to ask that because their expectations are going to be low from there forward, and so if I do anything, it'll be impressive. That's always what you want to do, is you always want to lower the expectations and then blast them away once you actually have to do something. And also, Packing just said, never talk politics in law school. Oh.
They have politics clubs at the certain law school that we're heading to.
I got to be honest with you, Packatang. That's just been my general rule ever since I started running this channel. Is to not really talk politics at all. And I've also found out that usually politics talk just doesn't age well, because politics is just a very volatile thing nowadays. And also it's honestly a little silly, regardless of what side you're on. So I just don't really get into it anymore. I'm just like, you know what? I'm just going to stay out of that. I'm going to stay neutral. Everyone else can go to town, but I'm not going to town. That's just the way I do it. So I would certainly not talk politics in law school. Honestly, it's really hard whenever even like close friends at this point, because I've gotten so used to doing it, talk politics. They'll sit there and say, did you know that so-and-so did this and that? And I'll be like, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've never even heard of that person. Have you? I haven't. But anyways, I hope that addresses that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Man. But anyways, I was about to say, look at these people that are trying to go to law school, trying to be funny, making jokes about the legal stuff. These attorneys are trying to get funny out here, and nobody finds attorneys funny, do they?
No.
I think most people hate attorneys.
No, yeah, most people hate attorneys. But everyone hates attorneys until you need one, or until you're getting jacked up by one. Then everyone wants
Those
to like
damn
attorneys.
devils.
I'm telling you, I'm telling you, man. Those sick people. I mean, and then they sit there and they just rob you blind, 500 an hour. You just whip out that 500 an hour. It's like, oh man, I'm going broke today. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Benjamin, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Benjamin, for that support. He says, love your streams and only been watching since the Wagner push, but now I'm tuning in every day. And great news on Sunday's stream with the law school. And all the best to you guys, and glad you'll still be about. And Slava Ukraine.
And Slava Ukrainian, thank you so much for the support and wishing us well on law school. Everyone's starting to wish us well on law school. And I got to say, I thank everyone so much for wishing us the best. Because this is something that has been happening in the background ever since we started running this channel. And, you know, if you're a longtime channel viewer, you've always heard the little murmurings about, oh, law school's coming around. We finally got in. You know, we're going to be going in the fall. And now it's finally happening. It's finally here. The one thing that we hated, though, this is the one thing we didn't expect, is that we would not be able to pick our classes. That's something that we did not plan on. Because if we were able to plan on that, we would have made it to where the streams would happen. And law school would have happened, too. But we weren't able to do that. They just assigned us schedules. And so now we have to go with those schedules. And that was where the problem came in. And we didn't know about that until just a few days ago. That's why we made the announcement on Sundays, because we figured out that day. But still.
That's kind of weird they won't let you pick the schedule either, because it's, you know, they always recommend you don't work your first year of law school. But the catch is, if you want to work your first year of law school, by picking the schedule for you, it screws you over big time.
Yeah, it really does. And I was like, man, I don't even know how to really work with this. You know, it's like, I don't know how. And we were talking about that on Sunday, because that's when the schedules came out. And we were talking about that up until the stream. We were like, well, something's going to have to move. You know, which thing moves? Is it going to be the channel, or is it going to be law school? And obviously, I can't just barge into law school and tell people that they're going to change my schedule. That's just not how law school works. The only thing we could change was the streaming schedule. And so then that's what had to be moved around, was the streaming schedule. But of course, we'll still be cranking out streams. We are going to be winding them down a little bit. We're going to knock a day off this week and probably 2 days next week in our normal weekday streaming schedule, to kind of get everyone a little bit used to rolled back stream schedules. And then after that, we'll figure out if we can ramp them back up if we can. But that's kind of how we're working the whole thing right now. Trying to be as transparent as possible with all of y'all about how we're working this thing. Because, you know, some of y'all think it's a funeral. Some of y'all think we're going away. And I wanted to be very clear. We're not disappearing off the internet. You know, we're not just going to, you know, go somewhere and just disappear into the blue. We are going to be here. We're always going to be here in video form or in stream form on the weekends. We'll always be around. We'll always be covering this news. But we have to make sure to take care of things that we have to do in our life that are going to keep us going forward and propelled forward, because we have plans. You know, we've had an entire life planned outside of the stream. Matthew and me knew going into college, when we were in our freshman year at college, that we were going to end up going to law school. This has been something that we've been working towards pretty much our entire lives outside of high school. So, you know, it's something we have to do. And I hope everyone understands. It looks like a lot of people are understanding and wishing us well. And I also thank you once again for the support and wishing us well again, because it means a lot to us that folks do enjoy what we do, and also are wishing us well in our next our next chapter here behind the scenes. But with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one is going to go to Marion Deemert, who puts in a $20 donation, as well as Dion Yurchenko, who also put in a $20 donation as well. Thank you very much, Marion and Dion, for that support. And there are no comments to address on either one of those super chats, but we do appreciate it very much. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I thank y'all both for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. I didn't throw in comments, but the support does help us to keep this thing going. And I got to thank y'all so much once again for enjoying this channel enough that y'all find it worthwhile to support and worthwhile to help us to keep this thing rolling. And so thank y'all to both of y'all so much once again. Y'all are both channel legends and old guards and have been around for a very long time. And I thank y'all both so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Cindy Mitchell, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Cindy, once again for that support. And she says, Russia is one of the biggest grain producers in the world. And do you think that China is giving Russia munitions too for the grain, as Russia needs the money, especially paying millions of dollars to China for munitions and gear.
That's possible. That could be a hidden arrangement that the Russians and Chinese have made, is that in exchange for increased grain shipments, the Chinese will be giving them arms. But the thing about that, though, is that that kind of goes against the Chinese population policy right now, because they actually are trying to still reduce their population a little bit, although it's kind of spiraling out of control now, and they're starting to realize that. So I don't really know if they need excess grain, because they don't really need to find more food to fuel a burgeoning population anymore. It's actually in decline, so they're actually needing less food as time goes on. So that may be the case, but due to their population policies, it may be a bit of a stretch, but it still could be the case. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, and also a very good question as well, because that's a very good idea. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Siri, who puts in a $15 donation, and thank you, Siri, as well, very much for the support. And Siri said, just spent a week in Poland with my aunt, who has become a big fan of the brothers. And info from this channel was invaluable when talking with the locals and Ukrainian refugees, and our lady's still at 8%. I believe so.
And thank you so much for the support. And also, what was that last part again, Matthew? Because I think I misunderstood it.
The question was, are the ladies still at 8%? And I think so is my answer.
Yes, I think so. And I can check that really quickly. And let me go over here and check that really quickly. And checking that really quickly, it appears... This is not quick, actually. This is taking a little bit. Let's see here. Viewer age. Here we go. So, it is still 8%. That is correct. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Very interesting question, by the way. And thank you so much for enjoying this channel, and also for using it inside of Poland. We try our best to make the information as packed as possible, and also as entertaining as possible. And I'm glad to know that not only is it just entertaining, it's actually something that's usable and you can actually use to talk with Ukrainian refugees, the Poles, and everyone else. And it's also great to hear that you've gotten someone introduced to our show. And I got to thank you so much for sharing that with them, and also talking about our channel to all kinds of folks. Because one thing that's always crazy to me is whenever we do this thing, we don't really think about it much outside of us doing it. We're just like, well, this is our thing, this is what we do, and it's not really anything beyond that. And it's always crazy to hear that people go around and they actually talk about us and share us with their friends and their family, and really anyone they can come across that talks about Ukraine. That is always very cool to us and very flattering. And I gotta thank you so much once again for those very kind words, and also the support as well, because it helps this channel to keep on rolling. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again.
All right, and with that being said, we're moving on to our next one, which is from Psyops, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Psyops, for the support. He says it's pronounced Cursed Bridge. And he gives us a very explicit camp song, which I could definitely not repeat on the stream. Very explicit. He says cough syrup is wild at the very end of it.
Oh, okay. Well, I think so much for the support, Psyops, and helping this channel keep on running. And cough syrup is wild. Cough syrup be wildin' out here. You know what I mean? You put that thing in an icy wacky slash. But anyways, thank you so much once again for the support, Psyops. I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you for joining us tonight for a little bit. I know you're off right now, but I'm sure you'll be watching this tomorrow. But thank you so much once again for being a longtime moderator of this channel, and also helping us to keep this thing rolling, and also being the comical relief. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Tom Exman, who puts in a $10 donation and says, Andrew, question mark, would it help if we send info reports from sites to an email if you have to help?
It probably wouldn't, to be honest. Because one thing that it's always really hard to do this, because people work on different schedules than me. And also I kind of get all of my stuff at the same time. And so it would be pretty hard to do that, because I don't really wouldn't know how to schedule. And that's also why we've never ended up getting a translator either, because even doing this 9 hours a day, before the stream, during the stream, after the stream, and adding that all together, there's not really a lot of time in between 5 o'clock and 9 o'clock for me to send everything over that needs to be translated to a translator and get that back in time for the show. And so sadly, it's not really conducive to have extra hands and extra help behind the scenes, just due to the way this machine is kind of streamlined in the background. It just probably wouldn't be possible. But still, I thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, and I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much for the kind offer as well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Dark Warrior 137, who puts in a $5 donation. And thank you, Dark Warrior, for the support. He says, "Hello, everyone. I'm Frick Around and accompanied by Find Out. And good evening, folks. And I'm Find Out. And we'll be talking about a NATO ship being hit." And I thought I was going somewhere else. I was worried for a minute.
And I thank you for the support, Dark Warrior. And I hope that, I know that was actually our first super chat tonight. I hope you enjoyed us getting to that news instantly. I feel like that's usually a service to do that at the beginning of a stream, is to get right to what our thumbnail and title is. But I don't really know, because it seems like a lot of people end up missing the news, and then they come in and go, "Oh, this is so clickbait, you didn't even talk about it," although we talked about it in literally like the first minutes of the stream and everything about it. But I still thank you so much for the support, and I don't know what NATO's response will be. I would like them to intervene in the war because of that, but at the same time, it's a tough one. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a $5 super chat from CK Bold, who says, "Take a live chat question," and of course we will. And thank you very much, CK, for the support as always. And the live chat question is gonna go to, let's see here, Plexus Gaming, who says, "When will the U.S. provide the Phalanx AA systems to Ukraine?"
The Phalanx?
Yes.
I don't know when. It's a system that everyone's been talking about. We've talked about it a good bit on this channel. And in case of y'all are wondering, what is a Phalanx system? The Phalanx is that minigun. No, the Phalanx system. The Phalanx is that little minigun system that's inside of a rotating turret that fires at air targets. I don't know when they'll send this. They're actually somewhat expensive, and they're also limited in range. So I don't really know where they'd be able to effectively use this. It couldn't really be near an urban area, because all of the lead that it's slinging will land somewhere, and it may land in an urban area. So they might not be able to use that around places like Kyiv, Kharkiv, Lviv, Odessa. But they could possibly try and use it elsewhere. They could try and use it near the front lines, near secure bases, installation sites, such things like that. So maybe they'll see it at some point, but I don't really know when, because no one's even really talking about this system at the moment. But with that, thank you so much for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Burn B. Alex, who puts in a $5 donation. And thank you very much, Alex, for that support. "I wish you the best of luck in law school," he says. "Keep up the reading and meet up to verify you digested the info in the reading assignments. And take care."
And thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And also, thank you for wishing us once again a good time in law school. Hopefully, it won't be that tough. We'll be trying to read up as much as we can, but you know, it's still going to be a little bit of an uphill challenge, even with trying to do the videos as well, because I don't know how much time in each of our days is going to be taken up. But I still thank you so much for the well wishes and the support nonetheless. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And also, really quickly, I'd like to correct something real quick, because someone in the live chat by the name of Jack F actually just said the Enforcer uses self-destructing ammunition in reference to the Phalanx close-in weapon system. And thank you for clarifying that. I actually did not know that. So it could be used in urban areas, because the ammunition would destroy itself before it would land on the ground. It would end up blowing up midair. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Thank you for clarifying that. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a $5 super chat from Lovable Linguist, and thank you very much for our support as well. And they said, "Is it possible that Putin and Wagner staged the coup to provide cover for moving into Belarus, and Poland seems legit worried?"
Can you reread that one again? I hate to say that, but could you?
Yeah, it says, is it possible that Putin and Wagner staged the coup, excuse me, to provide cover for moving into Belarus, and Poland seems legit worried?
I don't think so, because if that was supposed to be a cover that wasn't supposed to alert anyone, the Poles have already been alerted, and so it was a bad attempt to try and throw up a smoke and mirror show. So I don't think so, because if they were trying to throw everyone off, they didn't really throw anyone off, because the Poles are still concerned that the Wagner is there, even if it was after a coup. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Mank Two Wheeler, who puts in a 5 as well. And thank you very much, Mank, for the support. They said, "If NATO involvement is forced, should we continue into Russia to fully neutralize any future threat? It might be an interesting poll too, and Slow Ukraine and HS."
And thank you so much for the support, and Slava Ukraini. And to give you an honest answer, I would say no, we should not push that far into Russia. I think what we should do, if a NATO war was to break out with the Russians, is we should immediately shoot for about 10 miles outside of St. Petersburg and create a defensive line along the ring road out here. Let me see what the name of it is. Let's see. It's not giving me the name. I can't pronounce that name, unfortunately, but create a defensive line create an offensive that creates a defensive line out here on the ring road, and then have some forces push in behind Belarus, kind of heading down the highway to Moscow, but stop about right here, so that way we're not getting that close to Moscow. That gives the Western nations a good enough negotiating point to start talking with the Russians to create an agreement where everything goes status quo antebellum, where we are no longer in a war with the Russians, there is no nuclear exchange, and on top of that, the Ukrainians get back all of their territory, otherwise we steamroll the Russians. Of course, the Russians would want some concessions. I don't know what kind. We would have to figure out what that would be at that point, but I don't think we should go in and completely neutralize the Russians, because in the attempt to neutralize them, they are going to lash out with the nuclear weapons. And also, someone earlier said, what, are you kidding? They wouldn't use tactical nuclear weapons first. They would go for the ICBMs and then use the tactical nukes. No, that's the wrong way to escalate. They would escalate by using tactical nukes on mass formations on a battlefield, which would then lead towards using ICBMs. That's actually a part of Russian doctrine in a conventional war, and you could see that during the Soviet Union's history when they declassified their doctrines, is that Soviet Air Force pilots actually never learned how to accurately drop bombs, because the premise is that by the time the Russian Air Force would be used, they would already be using tactical nuclear weapons on frontline formations. And so there was no point in them accurately dropping a bomb on a pinpoint, because the tactical nuke would get them anyways. Even if it was off by several dozen or several hundred yards, it would still blow up and wipe everything out in the area. And then after that, after both sides started to use tactical nukes on the field and things started to get very hairy with that, then once one side started to make enough momentum and almost was about to crush the other, that's when you would see the nuclear Armageddon everyone always fears, which is the intercontinentals being fired across the North Pole, and then everyone's dead. So that's kind of how the escalation would go, from what we understand, based off of Western and Russian doctrines. Also, by the way, that's also a premise in Western doctrine as well. In the U.S. Air Force, the doctrine is that pilots are trained in how to use and operate tactical nuclear weapons, because in the event that the Russians start to break through, the idea is that we mount the tactical nuclear weapons onto the jets, they fly out there, they drop them on the large formations wherever a breakthrough is occurring, which wipes that breakthrough out, and then the front line is kept in a relatively stable state for the West. So that's actually how that works, in case of y'all are wondering. And so the escalation would start with tactical nukes, and then it would go to strategic nuclear weapons. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. Excuse me. And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Mark Rumbled. And thank you, Mark, for the support. And please excuse that cough. It's pissing me off more than it's probably pissing y'all off. And Mark says, the president of the U.S. turned NATO... that's political. Can't read that one, sadly. But he is not happy with NATO, and he thinks they're going the wrong direction, and wants to know your thoughts.
Well, I thank you so much for the support. I got to be honest with you. Everyone always likes to be critical of NATO and what they're doing, and we've been critical of NATO as well on this channel. But you always have to remember that it's a very tricky thing to be the person in charge and to have to call these shots. So you also have to give them a little bit of leeway. I don't like to be a stickler on folks and act like there's always something that they can do better, because, you know, you never really realize how tricky of a situation it is until you're actually in that seat. So I don't really want to criticize them too much. Of course, I think it could be better, but I don't really want to just blast them for it, because I kind of understand why they're doing certain things the way they are. But with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have another 5. This one is from Epic Trains Canada and says, I wish you both the best in law school. And man, we're getting a lot of law school comments tonight. And also, thank you very much. And it said, I've been through post-secondary myself, and it's a grind, but totally worth it. And Igor and Slav Ukraine.
And Igor!
I gotta say,
let's go ahead.
We're ready for that grind. We're mentally prepared, and we're ready to go. Hopefully we can handle it, though. But Enforcer, what say you?
And thank you so much for the support, Epic Trains Canada. I'd also agree. We're hopefully ready for that grind. And also, thank you so much once again for wishing us well. It's great to know that everyone's been wishing us well on this endeavor, and hopefully it ends up being a good one. And so with that, Igor and Slovakania. And thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on rolling. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to George A, who puts in a $50 donation, and thank you, George, very much for that very generous support, and he did not leave a comment, so thank you very much, George, for supporting the channel, and Enforcer, what say you?
And thank you so much, George, for supporting this channel and helping us to keep this thing running. Folks like you make this thing possible, and you didn't throw in a comment, but supporters like you help us to keep the lights on, help everything to keep on rolling behind the scenes, and I've got to thank you so much once again, because without folks like y'all, this channel wouldn't have been possible. It wouldn't have been possible for us to make it 517 days. It wouldn't have been possible for us to do anything. And I got to thank you so much once again, because while you didn't leave a comment, the support does say a lot, and it says that you want us to keep this thing rolling, and I thank you so much for that. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one is Sad Air Brake Noises, who puts in a 5 and does not leave a comment, I don't think. No, they did leave a comment. I forgot to copy it. They said, do you feel Putin's main goal is to create a land buffer that leaves the land charred and unusable even if he loses?
Possibly. That may be a plan of his. Of course, the Russians are big into the scorched earth tactic, so that may be something that they're planning on doing. So I would say yes, that may be what they're planning. I can't say that with certainty, though, but that it's a possibility. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Daimos, who puts in a 2 and says, Shoigu dressed up like a Ruski Mussolini.
Shoigu! He kind of did, didn't he? Like, thinking about that, it kind of did look like that. Honestly, he kind of looked like a fat Georgy Zhukov to me. But yeah, he kind of does look like a fat Mussolini as well. Let's go back and look at this. So there's the North Korean Honor Guard, you know, and there he is. You know, he kind of does. Viva el Duce! But anyways, with that, thank you for the support and pointing that out. That's a pretty good thing to point out there. And thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Lord Lathos, who puts in a 2 and says, how much more can NATO possibly sanction Russia?
I think we've about sanctioned them as much as we can at the moment, so I would be honest with you, I'm really drawing at straws here to try and come up with anything we could sanction them on extra. At this point, it would be kind of small. But Matthew sounds like he's got something.
The U.S. could start going after companies that are still operating in Russia. We really haven't cracked down on that to the fullest extent. We're still letting some companies operate over there, and NATO could crack down on that. But, you know, it seems like they're not really willing to do that.
Apparently, I would agree. That may be something we could do, but beyond that, I think we'd be grasping at straws to try and figure out something else to do to the Russians. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. Thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Persona Incognito, who puts in a 2 and says, why isn't mainstream news much covering ship attack?
I don't know. They didn't really cover it much, so I would have to be honest with you. I can't really explain why mainstream news covers some things and they don't. Really, it just matters about what can get them the most views, and usually that's inside the United States. That's usually American politics that drums up the most views, so they just end up covering that and really nothing else. I mean, hell, the world could be blowing up outside the United States. Every single country could be on fire, and you'll hear about how some random politician, you know, on one channel, this guy tripped, you know, so he's like a goofy idiot, or someone went and got 2 hamburgers instead of 1 or something, you know, so you know, it is what it is. I don't really know how to explain it, and I don't know why they're covering that, because that is a very serious situation. There was one time that it happened earlier in the war, right outside of Mykolaiv. I believe it was I'm trying to think. I think it was an Egyptian flagship that got hit by a Russian missile, and it was moored outside of Mykolaiv. And that was actually a really big deal. Everyone covered that back then because it was a serious situation, although it wasn't a NATO country. And now we see that a Romanian flagship gets moderately damaged by a strike that the Russians made on a Ukrainian port, and then that's just not covered at all. I don't really know why, but anyways, with that, thank you so much once again for the support, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Mank 2-Wheeler, who puts in a 2 once again and says, donating £2 toward Matt's cough medicine fund. And thank you very much, Mank. I did get some cough medicine the other day and found out how expensive cough medicine actually is. It's quite expensive. It's like $20 a pack. And I haven't actually used very much of it, actually, because I don't think it works that well. But, Enforcer, what say you about the cough medicine fund?
I've got to thank you for the support to the cough medicine fund. Me personally, I don't have to use it much. But I do thank you so much for supporting Matthew's cough medicine fund. Hopefully, he'll eventually start using it so that way the cough goes away. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, by the way, I saw some folks asking earlier, have I been to the doctor yet? I have not, because I'm very stubborn about that. Don't like going to the doctor. But if it goes on past August 1st, I'll probably have to go, and I'll be forced to go just to make sure this isn't pneumonia or something like that. Because I would hate to drop dead out of the blue. That would be terrible. But anyways, moving on to our next super chat. This one is a $2 donation from Sad Air Brake Noises. Once again, who says happy Bobcat noises, and thank you.
And thank you so much for the wishes of happy Bobcat noises. And thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on rolling as well. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again.
All right, and that is the end of our super chats for now. So we're moving back into our live chat questions. And up first, we have the Morse code decoders of the stream. We have Mark Hodges, Cife, Cliff Simonson, Earl Bernew, and Paul Schultz. They said the Morse code says the LSA will never die, and it lives through the hearts of every one of you.
And that is the sound of money, because y'all got that Morse code message dead on. The Lee Spring Army will never die. And I know, the Lee Spring Army largely lives through the live streams. That's really where the Lee Spring Army came from, because this channel really only did live streams at the start. But the Lee Spring Army will never die. I know it won't, because in each and every one of y'all is a massive conviction and belief in what the Lee Spring Army is, what it has been doing, and what we have done. And I know that as long as all of y'all are out there, the 150,000 of y'all out there at this point that watch this channel and have helped it out in making sure to get those fundraiser goals reached and go well above them, and to support this channel and help it to keep on running and everything else, I know that the Lee Spring Army will never die. And I know that y'all are the best community out there. There's nothing out there in the world that I've ever seen as a community that's been as great as this one. And I got to thank y'all so much once again for being a huge part of our lives, really. I mean, this thing isn't coming to an end, and I don't mean to make this sound like it's a eulogy or anything, but y'all have been a massive part of Matthew and my life for 517 days now, since the beginning of the war. And it's been everything we've done. I mean, we haven't even really taken holidays. We've never even left these computers for longer than a day at a time, because we're always here with y'all, and y'all are always here with us. And it means a lot to me that all of y'all have stuck it out with us for 517 days. The war's been going on for a long time, but the perseverance of the LSA is apparently longer than the war itself. And so I gotta thank every single one of y'all so much once again for being here with us, and also always making sure to carry the banner of the LSA well, and to make sure that the Lee Spring Army looks incredible compared to every other community out there. There's no other community on YouTube that's as grand and as amazing as the Lee Spring Army. And so with that, I hope that addresses that Morse code message fairly well, and thank y'all for deciphering that Morse code message again tonight on the 517th night of the war. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our first live chat question is going to go to AF Kaplan, who says, regarding the incident with the Romanian ship, has NATO released an official statement?
I do not believe that NATO has actually made an official statement at this moment, so unfortunately I would have to declare ignorance on that. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Eric, who says, can you please explain what's going on at the ZNPP?
So what we understand is going on at the ZNPP is that they are bringing the reactors into a hot shutdown. That's what we heard today, and I actually didn't cover that on the news, interestingly enough. I kind of just moved past that bulletin. But apparently the ZNPP is in a state of hot shutdown. Hot shutdown is when the reactors are online, but they're not producing enough electricity to transmit to the grid. So these reactors are completely operational at the moment, and if something is to happen at the ZNPP, they will end up going into a meltdown. That is a guarantee right now. So that is kind of what's happening at the ZNPP. Not trying to overplay it or anything, because, we kind of did that before, due to Ukrainian intelligence, so we're just going to kind of let it simmer in the background. But that's what's going on right now at the ZNPP. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Joshua Matkin, who says, if they don't respond, it makes NATO seem weak. And what recourse does Romania have?
Romania doesn't really have a lot of recourse, really, and it's really up to the large players in NATO. And, while the NATO alliance is supposed to protect every member equally, you always have to remember that there is a hierarchy structure in every single group. And the hierarchy structure goes as follows. The United States, number 1, the United Kingdom, number 2, Germany and France are kind of sharing number 3 and 4. The Germans and the French are actually kind of intertwined nowadays. And then the Polish are about number 5. And then the Italians are about number 6 and so on. Not to go through the whole list, but that's kind of your power structure of the top 5 or so. And so it really takes the majority of the top 5 NATO countries to really get anything done. Otherwise, they'll start telling the smaller countries like the Romanians, just let it go, don't do anything. That's also what they did with Poland when the Ukrainian missile from the S-300 accidentally landed in Poland and killed two Polish farmers. The Polish were immediately wanting to invoke Article 4 and Article 5 because they thought it was a Russian missile. But then the United States and, well, really the top 5 countries went and told the Poles, no, don't do that. It's a Ukrainian missile or something like that. Just don't escalate. And then they didn't escalate. So that's kind of what would happen in that situation. And the Romanians sadly really don't have a recourse if the Big Five don't really want to do anything. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and real quick, let me try to get my spreadsheet back up. It is closed for some reason. The next question goes to Pakistan, who says, are there countries that could declare war against Russia to join the fight with Ukraine and not provoke Russia against NATO?
There are some, but not many. Kazakhstan could probably be one of the few. Georgia could also be another one. But those are really the only ones I can think of. And also, Kazakhstan doesn't really have a massive standing army. They would probably actually lose, even if the Russians just put up the police against the Kazakhs. They would probably end up losing that fight, sadly. At least from what I remember their armed force to be. So let me check that. Army of Kazakhstan. And let's see how big their army is. It's actually 80,000 people, but I don't know what they have, like equipment-wise and everything else. And they only have a budget of $4 billion a year. That's, fairly small. So let's see here. Kazakh ground forces. And let's see what they got for equipment, if they tell us. See, it's not really much. They have 300 main battle tanks for this 80,000 man force. That's not really that good. 21 Tigers, 10 Terminators, 110 BTR-80s, 2 BTR-3s from Ukraine, 18 BPMs, 17 Cobras, 90 Arlans, and 40 Humvees. So I would expect to say that they wouldn't do that well. They just due to the lack of actual support that they have for their ground forces. So really, Georgia's the only one, and that's a bit of a can of worms because they would really be fighting to reclaim the unrecognized territories inside of Georgia rather than trying to fight inside of Russia. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least from what I could see. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $20 super chat from Junebug72, and thank you very much, Junebug, for that support. She said, thank you for everything, and call school, woohoo, and all the best. And yes, it will be sad. It's awesome news. No funeral here, LOL. And I know we'll see you when you're both able, and Slava Ukraine.
And Slava Ukraine. And thank you so much for the support, Junebug, and helping this channel to keep on running. And it is an amazing thing. It's been in the works for so long. It's been an incredibly long time, and it's finally here. It's kind of a little scary, really, because it's been in the distance for so long, and we've now made it here. And so, there's always a lot of apprehension that goes with that. But thank you so much once again for wishing us the best. And we will, of course, see you all as much as we can. We're still going to be trying to run this thing as regularly as possible, and I hope that we can, because if it's possible, we may even still run 3 to 4 streams a week, but I don't know about that. Don't hold me to that. It will definitely be 2 a week, Saturday and Sunday, and we'll, of course, still be running our Sunday fundraisers. But beyond that, I don't really know at this point. But still, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
I have a distinct feeling in the back of my mind that after we get in there, we'll probably, after a few weeks, probably change our schedule back around a little bit from just the weekends, probably to something else. But we'll have to wait and see. But don't hold us to that because we can't guarantee it. We'll have to wait and see. If we don't change the schedule again, y'all know we're swamped and we're absolutely overwhelmed. But anyways, moving on to our next super chat, we have one from Devin Harris, who puts in a 5. And thank you, Devin, for the support. He said, putting your priorities front and center and focus on what is important, and YouTube is just secondary, and also it might not exist in the future.
And thank you for the support. And I have to say, I always have to say this, and this is something that I think is important to remember. Some people make careers out of YouTube, but YouTube usually isn't a career for most people. We've been very lucky to even do this for 517 days. But it's something that, it's something that is fleeting. It's not going to last forever. People end up exploding on YouTube, and then they end up dying like a star, and that's just how YouTube works. Think about it. Who in the world is around from 10 years ago that either is still trending on YouTube and is #1, or they didn't just fall off and do something crazy. There's really none. And so it isn't really a career. It's something that we'll keep on doing as long as we can. We'll do this probably for years, but it's something that I'm not going to sit there and go, oh yes, this is what I want to do for 30 years, because there's so many other things I want to do. Of course, I want to be the president in 2040, and I can't do that being a YouTuber. So, other things will happen, and hopefully y'all be with me along the entire way. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Paul Plonsky, who says, Enforcer, should NATO send more weapons to show a stance?
I think we should. I think that would certainly be a good response to what's happened right now. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $20 super chat, once again from George A. And thank you, George, for the support. He says, I went to law school for a lark, Villanova, and I could pay for it from my previous year engineering job, which paid all of $10,000 a year.
10,000?
Law school was $3,000 a year. And law school was way harder than civil engineering and lived at home. Now, let me tell you, George, that is like considered a steal for law school. 10,000 a year. If our law school was 10,000 a year, I would feel so much more relieved. Our law school is nowhere near 10,000 a year. So we're in for some sweet payment, to say the least. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to agree with you completely, Matthew. That is certainly not the amount that we've gotten. It's way higher than that. But that is crazy to hear, and it's really cool to hear that you were able to get a law degree at a discount price. And so, with that, thank you so much for the support, George A., and helping this channel to keep on running, sharing that with us, because now I feel very jealous that I couldn't have gone to law school then. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
But see, though, you might have had it cheaper, which is obviously a huge advantage. But at the same time, you didn't have Westlaw, and you didn't have all the research tools, which made it a nightmare. You had to go to the law library for literally everything, which was terrible. Also, I think y'all had to do microfiche or whatever that thing was called, where you put like a thing under like a microscope or something, like to see the slides, like with info on it. I don't know if that's what it's called, but somebody will know. Excuse me. And with that being said, we're moving on to our next live chat question, which goes to Enzo. And it says, Enforcer, I'm just wondering, is there any partisan activity in the occupied territory Luhansk, Donetsk, if they are not happy with the Russians there, and what will happen with the war?
I think there is partisan activity. We just don't get a lot of reports about it anymore, or picture or video evidence to back it up. So sadly, I can't really say if anything is happening back there. The chances are there is something happening. It's just that we don't get a lot of info on it. So unfortunately, I'd have to declare ignorance on it rather than saying there is something going on back there. We just don't know what. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Linda Blanton, who says, my son asked me this. Excuse me. What is the role of police in Ukraine during an invasion? And I guessed, but thought I would confirm.
Can you read that one again? I think I misunderstood it.
She said, my son asked me this, and what is the role of police in Ukraine during an invasion? And I guessed, but thought I would confirm.
The role of police in Ukraine during an invasion is to become a light infantry force, and we saw that way early on in the war, usually around the areas of Kherson and Mykolaiv. We saw a lot of the police in that area become light infantry forces. So that's kind of what they do. They become a militia, light infantry, or a TDF, which are all really one and the same thing, just different names for it. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Martin R., who says, do sanctions in Russia really work? And I saw on YouTube a new video showing the changes in the shopping malls. Not one store was empty, all full of products, and just different brand names.
I think the sanctions are kind of working, at least on the financial side for the Russian government, but it doesn't really appear to be working on the consumer end of things. And I think we might want to start tightening down on that and fixing that issue, because that was kind of one of the big ways we were going to turn the Russian public against the Russian government, is by depriving them of consumer goods, and it appears that they haven't really been affected much at all. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the third to last question of the night.
All right, and this one goes to Ukraine, and it says, are the Iranian drones better than the Chinese models? The Iranians had more drone combat experience, but the Chinese have better materials.
I would say it's really hard to tell, because we haven't really seen the Chinese drones perform anywhere to see if they are better or not. I would say at the moment, considering combat experience, the Iranian ones are better, because they're really the only ones we've seen out on the field performing at this point. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and we are on to the second to last question of the night.
All right, and this one goes to Plexus Gaming, who says, as I see it, there are two outcomes to a NATO and Russia war. Russia is broken up, or a total nuclear war. And what are your thoughts?
I would say Russia is probably going to break up. I don't think a nuclear war is going to happen. Everyone tries to avoid that like the plague, and that's why it hasn't happened so far over about 70 years. And I think that we'll probably see, out of those two options, the Russians would break up first before a nuclear war would happen. That's my honest thoughts on it. And so with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night?
All right, and before we get to that real quick, I wanted to address something in the live chat from Hoodoo, Texas. He said that YouTube is not a profession. YouTube can disappear overnight and a profession lasts. And I have to agree with that 100%. We actually said that yesterday or the day before. YouTube, like, for example, look at all the other social media sites that simply disappear out of nowhere. Like Vine was one of them. MySpace simply went away. These things can, like, go away quickly. And even though YouTube looks very promising right now, it can go away. And YouTube is basically, it's a job. It is a job, but it's not a profession. And I know some people are going to disagree with that, but, you know, that's just my opinion on it. But unfortunately, what say you if you want to comment?
I would say that a lot of people always look at being a YouTuber as a dream job, and it really is a dream job. You get to make your own hours, you get to do what you want, you get to cover what you want. You are the person, you are the boss. And that is something that a lot of people don't get in life. And so a lot of people want to be a YouTuber, and a lot of people want to make it a career. But having been a kid, you know, a Gen Z kid, you know, although I'm not a big fan of labeling anyone as a generation, I am a Gen Z kid. And having grown up on the internet, I've seen that it's not a career. People end up fading out on the internet. People try and do the same shtick for 10 years, and then they end up falling off about the 6th or 7th year, and then just bleed on for about another 3 until they give up. It's just something that isn't a career. You can't really make it a career. Sure, you can do something like Mr. Beast does, and you can try and blow up and make a brand out of yourself, and that's something that really is a career, because he went all in, and he's creating an entire entertainment brand and industry outside of YouTube, really, although his big thing is YouTube videos. But you just can't really do that as a normal person. And also with our aims and aspirations, what we want to do outside of YouTube, we couldn't be able to do this as a career and then have a whole other career going on somewhere else. And also, you know, having done this, I can't really, like, you know, it's hard work, sure. I mean, you know, I sit here and do 5 to 2 every day on these streams whenever they run. Well, it's not really hard work. It's just a lot of work and a long time at it. But it's something that I just can't really classify as a career. It's you know, I don't know. It just feels like there's something in there that just isn't there with the YouTube job that's there with a normal career. Although I've never had a career at this point, so I wouldn't know. But it just feels like there is something fundamental in the whole YouTube job that is missing that doesn't really make it a career, at least at this level. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who was the lucky last person to put in the lucky last question of the night?
And the question goes to Marion Deemer, who says, what happened to the Russian orders to hot start the Zaporizhzhia power plant?
What happened to the Russian orders?
Yes.
Oh, they were followed through. They did conduct a hot shutdown of the nuclear power plant, which was condemned by the IAEA just right afterwards. So that is what we understand at the moment, and the orders were followed through. And so with that, I hope that does address that question fairly well, and it is the end of tonight's stream. I thank you all so much once again for watching tonight. It's been an absolute honor to have 7.2 thousand of y'all on tonight watching this news. And if y'all did enjoy, make sure to hit the like button, make sure to comment, make sure to subscribe, because this channel is going to keep on rolling. We're going to keep on doing this through law school. We won't be doing this 6 days a week on live stream, but we'll always have video summaries coming out every single day. And you can always count on us to be here doing our thing day in and day out. And so, thank you all so much once again for watching. Good night. Good luck, stay safe, take care, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army never dies.
And good night, LSA, and Slava Ukraine. See you tomorrow.
Yes.
The Lee Spring Army sends its regards.